Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Arlington AISD Board of Trustees on May the 20th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Due to health and safety concerns related to the COVID-19 coronavirus, members of the public are encouraged to participate by watching the school board meeting online at www.aisd.net. Seating in the boardroom will be limited in order to follow the CDC guidelines for social distancing. All persons in attendance will be required to wear a mask. One or more trustee may participate in this meeting via electronic means consistent with the Texas Open Meetings Act and the governor's disaster proclamations related to COVID-19 through proclamations, executive orders, and suspensions of Texas law. At least a quorum of the board will be participating in person by video conference or telephone conference in accordance with the provisions of Section 551.125 or 551.127 of the Texas Government Code that have been suspended by the order of the governor. Members of the public may access this meeting via AISD website at www.aisd.net. So the first thing on our agenda is the swearing in of our school board trustees, and presiding over that swearing in is Honorable Judge Carrie Walker. Judge Walker, please come to the podium.
All right, I've been told I need to use this microphone. If I can figure out how to use it. Yeah, I guess I turn it on first. All right, the first order of business for this is I need to call up Miss Sarah McMurrough. Hey, how are you doing? Good. If you could raise your right hand for me. I, Sarah McMurrough,
I, Sarah McMurrough,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of trustee,
of the office of trustee,
Place 1,
Place 1,
Arlington Independent School District
Arlington Independent School District
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of this state, so help me God.
and of this state, so help me God.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Did you want me to get Ms. McMurrough? If I could get you to, I'm going to go ahead and exit.
The official.
Yeah, you need to sign right here. Oh, you're left-handed.
I am left-handed.
All right, thank you.
Sarah, now that you've signed that, would you like to introduce or say anything to anyone out in the audience?
I would love to. So I'm joined by so many precious friends. Oh, the mic, sorry. Hello. I'm joined by so many precious friends and colleagues and former students this afternoon, and they surprised me by being here. One of the best surprises ever. I'm also here with my precious family tonight. My father-in-law, Joe McMurrough, my mother-in-law, Karen McMurrough, and my sons, Danny, wave to everyone, Danny McMurrough, Henry McMurrough, and my husband, Chris McMurrough. As you can see, I am pretty outnumbered. My boys are my why. I could not be here without them, and I'm just so excited to give back to the district that gave so very much to me as a student and as an educator. So thank you all for being here each night. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos, President Mays, and the board for this opportunity. I'm so very excited to join your team of 8. Thank you.
All right, the next young lady I need is Melody Fowler. Melody, how are you doing? It's great to see you. All right, if you'd raise your right hand, and I should have said repeat after me before, but anyway, if you repeat after me, I, Melody Fowler,
I, Melody Fowler,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of trustee,
of the office of trustee,
Place 2,
Place 2,
Arlington Independent School District
Arlington Independent School District
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of this state, so help me God.
and of this state, so help me God.
All right, congratulations. If I can get you to. Yeah. I always try to lick my thumb through my mask and that doesn't work.
It's like at the grocery store with the
Yes,
bags.
yeah. Oh, sorry, let me get out of the way. That's okay. You're photobombing. I'm not trying to.
Spence will get you out of the way. That it?
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Congratulations, Melody.
I think it may be off.
I'll just use my teacher voice.
No.
Thank you, Spence.
There we go.
I want to thank everyone so very much. It's such an honor to be reelected and to be able to serve again. I want to thank my friends that are here, Chandra and Presley. Thank you for being here. My son Brennan, his girlfriend Lindsay, my friend Stacy, and my husband Larry. Thank you so much for being here. And I truly could not have done it with all of your support. I appreciate you so much. I'm anxious for another 3 years. We're ready to work. So thank you for being here and keep supporting us. We're working hard to do what's right for the teachers, the parents, and the students. So we appreciate your support so very much. Thank you.
All right, I need Dr. Aaron Reich. All right, Aaron, if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Aaron Reich,
I, Aaron Reich,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the trustee,
of the trustee,
Place 3,
Place 3,
Arlington Independent School District
Arlington Independent School District
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my ability
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Aaron, if I could get you to sign that right there where it says officer.
They say they're full to capacity, and the hallway's full of people that want to come in. What's up with that? This is America. Not citizens.
All right, there you go, Dr. Reich. Thank you very much. Would you like to share some words, please?
Sure. Thank you, President Mays. I am so honored to be serving another 3-year term for everybody in this community. I do not have any family here to introduce. They are all out of town during this. Maybe they're watching. I don't know. I hope they are. They'll probably tell me that they were. But no, without my family's support, there's absolutely no way that I could do this. And I just want to say thank you to the community. Thank you to everyone for really having trust in me to continue to serve in this capacity. We, as a team, are doing great things, and we can't do it without the community support. And I look very forward to continuing to serve. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and it is a very heavy responsibility to govern this district, to make sure that all of our children are prepared as best they can be to be amazing citizens when they graduate from Arlington ISD. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Well, congratulations. Thank you very much, Judge Walker. It's nice to see you again.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I just want to say I had 2 kids that went through the AISD, and they've been very successful. Thank y'all very much for what y'all do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I would like to thank everyone for coming out today to watch the swearing in of our newly elected trustee, Sarah McMurrough, and our re-elected trustees, Melody Fowler and Dr. Reich. We have such a great opportunity in Arlington to elect individuals that the citizens believe will represent them well in making decisions that impact the lives of our precious children. The Board of Trustees on May 20th, 2021, beginning at 5:11 p.m., will convene in a closed session pursuant to sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act for the topics set forth on our agenda. We will reconvene in open meeting at approximately 6:30 p.m. At this time, I will reconvene into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees for May the 20th, 2021, beginning at 7:37 p.m. We will start our meeting with the opening ceremony. Mrs. Fowler, please join us in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. And now, if you would please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. So one of the items which preceded this meeting was the swearing in of our trustees, Sarah McMurrough, Melody Fowler, and Dr. Aaron Reich. Congratulations to the 3 of you on your election. Your re-election, your election. So now we move to the next items on our agenda, Organization Board of Trustees, which is the election of board officers. It is our policy each year at this meeting in which we seat trustees for new terms. The election of board of officers be placed on the agenda, and at this time, the gavel is handed to the superintendent for the purpose of beginning our elections. This is the only time this happens and is for the purpose of beginning our elections. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, Ms. Mays. And we'll start this process. Do we have a motion and a second for president?
Mr. Hogg?
Thank you, Superintendent Cavazos, which is always weird to have you call on us for this. At this time, it's my honor to nominate Ms. Keisha Mays to continue serving as president.
Do we have a second?
I'd like to second.
We have a motion by Mr. Hogg, a second by Ms. Fowler, to name Keisha Mays the board president. At this time, please vote. All those voting in the affirmative, congratulations, Ms. Mays. President Mays, here's your gavel.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for vice president? Dr. Reich? Oh, he came up as Dr. Reich. I apologize.
We're sitting in the wrong seat. President Mays, I'd like to nominate Mr. Hogg as vice president and Ms. Fowler as secretary.
Do I have a second for the nomination of vice president and secretary?
I'll second.
So we've got a motion by Mr. Wilbanks, a second by Mrs. McMurrough. I'm going to get this continued right. Any questions? Seeing none, please vote. All present vote in the affirmative. Congratulations, Mr. Hogg, Vice President. Congratulations, Mrs. Fowler, as Secretary. Dr. Cavazos, anytime. We have to add another reason to hand this over. So the next item on our agenda is our program and our presentation. Our presentation is recognizing our Outgoing Student Leadership Advisory Board. This will be done by Dr. Christy Buell. She and Mr. Hogg have worked with our SLAB students this year. Would you like to come to the microphone and say something?
So good evening, President Mays, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. I've had the honor of working with this group of SLAB students during this school year in conjunction with Trustee Hogg, and this is our Student Leadership Advisory Board. Tonight we will be recognizing these students for their hard work and their accomplishments on the advisory board. This group of students is made up of the junior class presidents from each of the traditional 6 high schools in Arlington, and one from Arlington Collegiate High School. This group is led by a student who served as a SLAB member during the 2019-20 school year and was elected to serve as this year's president by the outgoing SLAB members in the prior year. The SLAB president is here today, and she served this year. It's Izzy Perez, and she's from Arlington High School. So she's been on SLAB for 2 years. The purpose of this group of student leaders is to represent AISD students' opinions and provide the voice of students to the Board of Trustees. SLAB members assist in building relationships between students, the Board of Trustees, campuses, senior staff, and the Superintendent of Schools. They also are assigned a partner board member, and they meet regularly with the Board of Trustees. SLAB members have no official voting rights regarding the official Board of Trustee business, since they are just in an advisory role. It is my honor to recognize the following students that served on SLAB during the 2020-21 school year. Students, if you could please stand when I call your name. We have President from Arlington High School, Izzy Perez. Arlington Collegiate High School student, William McPhail. He's joined by his proud mom tonight. And Seguin High School student, Radana Patel. We also had some additional SLAB members that couldn't be present tonight that I'd like to recognize. Arlington High School student, Julia Laswell. Bowie High School student, yes, sorry, we'll do that. Bowie High School student, Tyler Brown. Lamar High School student, Karina Lorles. We have 2 from Martin High School, they're co-presidents. We have Brittany Vo and Carson McGuire. And our Sam Houston SLAB member is Veronica Arocha. Congratulations again, we're very proud of you and we appreciate your student leadership here in Arlington ISD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buell. Mr. Hogg, would you like to say a few words? And thank you once again for assisting Dr. Buell this year with our SLAB students.
Thank you, President Mays, and Dr. Buell, thank you. And I know it's Dr. Buell's first year also taking over this group. And Izzy and to the groups out there and those at home. Like many things this year, it was more than challenging, right? And in full disclosure, did our SLAB get to do as much as they've done in years past? No. In full disclosure, another, I say, victim of the pandemic from where it came. But I can tell you, my couple of Zooms with Karina, my student, and Numra, they helped. The student feedback, and this all came from an original strategic plan design where we had very strong student focus groups and making sure the board had leaders on each campus, and that's where SLAB came from. These are young men and women that are leaders that were elected by their constituency within their high school to work with us and work with our constituency. And some of the insight these students have brought about remote learning this year, things to change, it helps us make decisions. It helps us get a really strong leader on that campus to give ideas and insights. So while we may not get to see you as much as we'd like this year, or even talk as much as we'd like this year, I can tell you it may have been some of the most important discussions. I can tell you Karina in one of my discussions changed my mindset over a couple of different things of what she's done and how she works. And so I can't thank you guys enough. I thank you for your work on this, and I thank you for being a leader and stepping up and leading within your campus and the network. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Once again, thank you very much, you SLAB students. Thank y'all for being here this evening, and thanks for being such a great representation of what our ISD students are. Thank you. Okay, now we come to our open forum for agenda items. As shared before, all persons in attendance are required to wear a mask. Speakers who are addressing the board in person, please keep your mask on unless you have already presented and had approved a medical reason. As stated on the posted agenda, members of the public who desire to address the board regarding an item on this agenda are required to register by sending an email to the Superintendent of Schools Secretary, lbenjami@aisd.net, no later than 3 p.m. the day of the board meeting. Mrs. Benjamin, do we have any requesters registered to address the board regarding agenda items?
Yes, ma'am, we have several. Our first requester is Armandina Guerra.
Okay, I will make one more, just come on up. I will make one more statement. This is for everyone who will be speaking this evening. This is a routine part of the school board's agenda for regularly scheduled meetings. This segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to share their views with the trustees on items that are on the agenda tonight. It is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. Personnel matters are not appropriate subjects for open forum. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Mrs. Benjamin will notify you when your time is up, and please end your presentation at that time. Your time starts now.
I urge the public at large of what I'm about to say, don't take my word for it. Do your own research, connect your own dots using critical thinking of words and events that have come to pass and what is happening in the present time. Look at movies and documentaries of the past and present which tell half-truths to laugh at our face. See where you find history has been rewritten or whitewashed. Do you know what the burning of books event is? Today, parents are taking a stand because the government wants to use our children as their guinea pigs. But folks, you might not have kids today, but you could have them tomorrow, and still the government is experimenting on you if you let them. Come and join us in the fight and learn the movement early on for future generation that will one day be making decisions and policies in your old age. We must stand up for our children and humanity now. The cabal, those that own all the money in the world, are gauging our pushback for them to see what their next 4D chess move should be. Are they going to bring the end of times in faster, or are they going to ease up a bit? What they want to do is get rid of the middle class. They want population control. They want to have it where they are the masters and we are at bondage to them. They do not want you to merely think you still have some control. They want you to know you have no control over yourself, and the state/them makes every decision for you. We cannot wait till this comes to our doorstep. By then, it will be too late. Wake up, America and world, and hear what parents of children have to say, because this affects you too, childless people. The government, your government, my government, have worked in cahoots sometimes to experiment on the public in the past, and it continues in the present with this nanotechnology of chemical fluid. Once this technology is injected into you, you cannot spit it up, poo it out, cough it up, or anything. There are honest doctors and folks in the field of medicine that can explain it to us elementary style because of what pages I read. I cannot keep up with the order and names of how the fluid injection begins to activate in the body. I will not allow our government to experiment on our children with a nanotechnology of fluid that not even members of the CDC, FDA, and some in government officials who will not take it. In photo ops, how do we know that some politicians were not just given a batch of saline water? I do not trust government that supports a group of folks that are okay with abortion and murder of a full-term baby born. They say and scream like lunatics, my body, my choice. A government that uses our tax dollars so that they get a discount to carry out their abortion and murder. Yet these are the kind of folks in federal, state, and local that have the nerve to tell us to wear a mask or you cannot enter. And we urge you to take the vaccine, but it is not mandatory, they say. Yeah, voluntary today, but mandatory tomorrow, or else you're not able to participate with society. I do not trust government folks which have hardly to none worked a day in the public sector. I do not trust government officials that wake up every morning making decisions depending on which way the wind blows or of what their handlers tell them to do, like a dictatorship. I do not trust a government that dismisses Americans' needs like the homeless and children in foster care to put illegals first. They come in droves because corruption in government expects and finds it easy to manipulate them to carry their water by redistribution of wealth from hardworking Americans like my parents. It makes me sick what our government has done in the past to our children and continues to do. Have y'all ever heard of a group called NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association? Did you hear what I just said? I said man-boy love. The government turns a blind eye to what they are complicit to, but go and investigate a president of the United States for mere hearsay. As a child growing up in the late 70s and 80s, I often wondered why adults were so mindless and blind at all the evil around us just to sit on their hands. As a parent now, I understand much better, and so I am here. I do not need federal, state, or local government to tell me what choice in my life I must take. I do not appreciate the insult of the next thing that will come if we do not stand up now, such as the government telling us who we can sleep with, how many children we can have, and their genders. We are not Cuba, China, Germany, or China of the past or present. Folks, so much of what our government reacts to or not is by design. Stop thinking the government has your best interests at heart, because they do not. We are just an experiment to them. They make their backdoor deals on tax dollars and children's lives. Thank you.
Mrs. Benjamin, if you don't mind, can you maybe just state the names of the next two or three so everybody can kind of just be prepared and come up if your name has been called once the speaker ends?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Micah Ordway. After that is Blanca Martinez. And then Ajua Mason. Micah's first.
Thank you for allowing this time to address my concerns and actions being taken by this board. I have multiple concerns. First being your voluntary, active involvement in advancing an effort to vaccinate our children. I do not understand when before a body of educational elected officials has been involved in a vaccination effort. Your roles did not change during the election, nor did they change during the pandemic. Yet you're using our funds, possibly our transportation system. You're announcing preliminarily that a vaccine may be forthcoming for my 12-year-old. Yet in this announcement, I did not see from this body or from this school district advisory information on its safety for me as a parent to evaluate. You did not include links to the Arlington information tracking system or Tarrant County's tracking system to show me where is the emergency. What is the reason to vaccinate children as young as 12 in this area? What is the reason for AISD, your funds, my tax dollars, to be utilized for this effort? I, as a parent, have insurance. I can take my child to my doctor. I do not need your educator involvement in what vaccinations my child receives, when they receive it, or advance notice 3 days prior that it was forthcoming. None of this information was provided. You say your goal as a body and your priority is to your community and to educate our children. You did not find it even possible in this notice to give parents an educational opportunity to evaluate this for themselves. And you've got this data. Nowhere was that fed to anyone. I object in your involvement in this effort. You are not our health administration. You are not our public health safety system. You are educators. You have nothing to do with the vaccine rollout. You will not be responsible for monitoring it. You're not going to be responsible for reporting adverse events. And since your partnership utilizes the fire department, EMTs, and non-medical staff and personnel, guess what, board? It also doesn't get reported to the CDC for adverse event reporting. You don't have officials following up with parents who are getting vaccinations. I know three who went to this effort at the beginning of the week. Not one health official has been in touch with those parents to ask them how their child is doing. Do you care? Do you care? Or is it more important to jump on the bandwagon of popularity and administer and encourage? And yes, your announcement conveys your encouragement to get this vaccine to every parent. And some of those parents do not have, or maybe don't know where to look for this information. Is it not important to educate? Is it not important to provide fair information to your community? This mask, I can't even read what I wrote, but I am a fairly good public speaker and know what my objections are here for tonight. But because of this stupid thing, I can't even read what I've written. You're not a legislative body, and you're still forcing my child to wear these. 5 weeks ago, I took my 8-year-old out of school and had her stay home virtually because the hostage taking of the trade for her friends and her social life made her develop headaches every day to wear this. She was getting sick. They made her run around in school, in gym, while her big fat gym teacher yelled at her, told her to keep her mask on, and my 8-year-old is saying, I can't breathe. You know what his response was? You should probably sit out and not enjoy yourself. So instead of being empathetic as an administration, he punished her. Do you not recognize that as parents? Does that not seem cruel and unusual to you? Would you stand for that for your child? Yet my concerns in this many letters to this board have been ignored. These letters were sent to my local principals, ignored. Not one single response. But I did get your COVID announcement. I did get your vaccine announcement. I did get your announcement of a survey that I completely objected to. It is very lucky for the board. I don't have 2 more minutes.
Okay, I don't see our next speaker coming up. Mrs. Benjamin, do you
Blanca
mind?
Martinez. Is Blanca here? After that will be Adjua Mason.
Hello, board members, superintendent, president. We're here on behalf of the children that don't have a voice. We're being a voice for the voiceless. You're made an agreement to transport these children to get vaccinated during school hours at our tax dollars. My concern is that that vaccine, they may be paying you, maybe that's a question that you can answer, how much are you getting per vaccine or per center, or what is the incentive for doing this? However, there is no incentive that's worth the lives of our children, and I know we're a little upset, most of us are, and I just came back from talking to some of the parents near the site where they will be vaccinated on Saturday to find out that they didn't even know. They thought it was mandatory. They don't know any English. The letters were not informing them. They didn't understand it. Why are we doing this without having at least a meeting like this where the parents can come and sit down and let's tell them the risk. Let's tell them that it's from fetal cells. Let's tell them the plans that and the deaths that are going on. 4,000 deaths so far. This is with adults that have died. And that's only 1% of the total is what's estimated. And yet we're lining up our kids and busing them in to take a vaccine where 4,000 people, that's more than the COVID cases. So-called COVID cases because we don't have any flu anymore. A broken hip died of the COVID. But yet we're sending our children, which are supposed to be trusting us. I'm a social worker by profession and a minister of the gospel. And my life has been to support, to help, to be an advocate for the ones that don't have a voice. These children do not have a voice. You must be their voice. You must vote for them. You're here, you chose an educational, I hope, profession because you care about the kids. You love the kids. You will be an advocate for the kids. Let's get back to the basics. Why are we here? This is about the kids. How dare us forget that little bit, which is everything, that this is about the kids. They are our future. They are innocent. They are pure. They look up to us. And if they send a letter home to go and get vaccinated, guess what? They're, especially the Latino families, they're holding it up and say, well, you know, me lo dijo el director, me lo dijo la presidente, so it's got to be true. They're thinking that they're trusting all of our parents because there's no color in the eyes of God. I'm just saying for an example that these parents don't know. And we should be backing them because we're backing the children. First, you want to be a vaccination site? The first thing I say is, oh, what vaccine? Let me see some data. And not the data that Bill Gates is putting out or that Big Pharma's putting out because it touches their pocket. I want to see the data that shows how many deaths, what's going on, who's putting it out there. How can I, and back, look at the Tuskegee Project. That really happened. That really happened not too long ago. And the CDC is the same agency now responsible for this so-called COVID vaccine, which is not even a vaccine. It's not even a vaccine. And we're injecting it into our children. We're busing them, for heaven's sake. It reminds me of how they loaded the trains during the Holocaust. They didn't fight it. The guards and the police, they all said, not my job. I'm just doing my job.
Thank you.
And nobody spoke for the Jews. Who's going to speak for the children today? Please, I beg you. I hope it's you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless.
Ajua Mason. Do we have Ajua Mason? And after that will be Rebecca Rogers and Marisol Fritz.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Sarah. I wonder if you remember me. Congratulations to your victory win. I remember seeing you when you were out campaigning, and one of the questions that I asked you was your thoughts on critical race theory. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. Critical race theory teaches students to demonize an entire group of people solely on the base of race. It's a psychological form of manipulation, brainwashing, and ultimately it's child abuse. Critical race theory also weakens society and breeds hatred. Critical race theory creates racial tension, and it has absolutely no place in public schools, and hopefully it has absolutely no place in the AISD
Ms.
school
Benjamin,
district.
Can you just hold time? I don't want to take up our time. I just wanted to remind you that this part of the open forum is for things that are on the agenda. Do you have anything else to talk about that's on the agenda? If so, we will restart your time.
I have a question for you. When did the schools become the public health safety? What happened on Monday was absolutely appalling, and it was very disgusting, and it was very disturbing. Who approved of a holiday, such a holiday, for this non-FDA experimental drug to be administered by firemen on our children? Who approved it? And it's still being researched. We also know that there are risks that are involved. We know that there has been ultimately the sacrifice of life, which is death, that has been caused by this experimental drug. We know this. Now, the other day, I was in Fort Worth at the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court. I spoke with the county judge, B. Glenn Whitley, and I had a few questions for him, and hopefully you guys can answer this question because he couldn't seem to answer it for me. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked him. Who is responsible for if a child is injured? The school board. Will they be responsible if a child is injured? The hospitals, the medical facilities, will they be held responsible if citizens are injured by this non-FDA approved experimental drug? The state of Texas, will they be held responsible for Texans that are injured by this experimental drug? Will the government be held responsible for Americans that are injured by this non-FDA approved experimental drug? Can any of y'all answer that question for me? Because not only do I have these same questions, millions of citizens and Americans have this same question. Thank you.
Rebecca Rogers. Fritz is after her.
My name is Rebecca, and I'm here to discuss several critical issues occurring here in Arlington ISD. For over a year, Arlington ISD has been complicit in experimenting on our children's emotional, psychological, and physical health. The district has unnecessarily kept our students masked, impacting their physical and mental health. On Tuesday, May 18th, Governor Abbott issued an executive order prohibiting government entities and schools from mandating masks, an executive order that should have never have been issued since it violates constitutional rights. Although the mandate states school has until June 4th to comply, it is time to take them off of our students and stop requiring them in schools. If the mask hasn't been bad enough, now the district is using taxpayer-funded facilities and partnering with Tarrant County to host vaccine clinics, further experimenting on our children's physical health by making them test subjects. This gene therapy is an emergency use only, and parents are not getting full disclosure to the harm this vaccine is causing. What I just passed out to you guys is the Pfizer fact sheet that you guys sent in an email to parents. I have some things highlighted there, and we'll get to that in just a moment. The Pfizer fact sheet that the district sent out should have stopped each of you in the tracks and raised red flags enough for you to halt such an experiment on our children. The fact that you didn't shows just how complicit you are in harming our children. The fact sheet on page 1 specifically states the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is an unapproved vaccine that may or may not prevent the spread of COVID-19. So if it doesn't prevent it, why are you giving it to our children? Especially since they are not really harmed at all by COVID-19. Page 3 of the fact sheet that you have, that you sent out, continues to state it is an ongoing clinical trial. I've highlighted that for you on that page, which means you're experimenting on our kids and they are test subjects. According to Federal Trade Commission, truth in advertising, promotional materials, and especially materials involving health-related products cannot mislead consumers, omit important information, or express claims. All of this falls under the rubric of deceptive advertising, whereby a company is providing or endorsing a product, whether presented in the form of an ad, on a website, through email, on a poster, or in the mail. Although that email sent to parents had a fact sheet attached with some of the information, the district chose to host and encourage parents to get their student vaccinated and did not specifically state in the email itself that COVID-19 injections are unimproved EUA vaccines that won't necessarily make campuses safer and could in fact harm them. The district chose not to be forthcoming in this information. The fact sheets were only provided in English, reading and speaking parents, and not in any other language format, providing a disadvantage and a written language barrier to ethnic groups that do not read or speak English. Just because you are partnering with the fire department does not dissolve the district of any liability if a student suffers for an adverse event. If you are not aware, you should be, that a student or family could file a civil suit against the district should the student suffer an adverse event or death. It is neither the district's nor the city or county job to immunize the populace. If a parent wants their child to get a vaccine, they are more than capable to take their child to the child's medical provider. If they are unable to go to their provider, they are offering the COVID shot at every corner, from Walmart to Walgreens and every place in between. The Arlington School District should not be participating in experimenting on our children and should be ashamed for doing so. I am asking that the district halt all and any upcoming future vaccine clinics. Thank you for your time.
And following Ms. Fritz will be James Fritz and then Heidi Fritz.
Is my time starting now? When I spoke on April 22nd, you, Ms. Mays, and AISD attorney Dennis stated to me personally, you may not criticize or attack the character of any school official or employee during public forum, and that if you do, you will be deemed out of order and your time will immediately expire. Well, I'd like to inform you of the updated law effective September of 2019 for Texas Government Code, Section 551.007, public testimony, which states, a governmental body may not prohibit public criticism of the governmental body, including criticism of any act, omission, policy, procedure, program, or service. With that being said, we decided to speak in person this time since the last time Mr. Wilbanks was on his laptop and Mr. Reich was on his phone during our presentations when my daughter tearfully spoke to you all about the harms and what she has gone through this school year, which was extremely disrespectful. I have been an ER nurse for 23 years, and I have never seen such corruption in all my career. I am exercising my First Amendment rights and speaking on behalf of my children and not my profession or my employer. I would like for everyone to know that AISD has thrown out at least 6 of my formal grievances, and they continue to try and intimidate our family by having their attorney, Dennis, address my concerns. Let me inform everyone of some of the countless laws which AISD has broken this year. Governor Abbott's original mask order stated that children 10 years and under did not have to wear a mask, yet Arlington ISD mandated via their code of conduct that children in grades 1 through 12 wear a mask. Since March of 2020, both of our children have been denied a free appropriate public education, FAPE, as provided in Section 504 and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Our daughter was denied equal opportunity to soccer tryouts 2 days in a row in November of 2020, all because she can't breathe wearing a self-suffocation device. Our children have not been allowed to have equal access to education on campus all year long because of an experimental unlawful mask mandate. AISD has rejected our religious exemptions twice, violating our First Amendment rights. On April 20th, AISD refused to allow our children to take the STAR test. They made my daughter go home because of their unproven experimental tyrannical muzzle mandate. Violation of AISD Board Policy 220901 entitled Educational Philosophy. Specifically, the education philosophy states the mission of the Texas public education system is to ensure that all Texas children have access to a quality education that enables them to achieve their full potential and fully participate now and in the future in the social, economic, and educational opportunities in our state and nation. Violation of the Texas Constitution Education Code 1.002, equal educational services or opportunities. You have violated that. An educational institution shall provide equal opportunities to all individuals within its jurisdiction or geographical boundaries pursuant to this code. The Texas Education Code is a statute passed through the Texas State Legislature and enacted as law. As such, no mandate, safety protocol, governor, mayor, or county judge order can supersede this law. AISD has also censored and removed appropriate public comments from their Facebook page. Moving forward, AISD has fraudulently referred to Mr. Vinny Tanasia from the Tarrant County Health Department as a medical doctor on multiple occasions and have misled the public. On October 6, 2020, Mr. Tanasia blatantly lied about his MBBS degree from another country being equivalent to a medical doctor here in the United States during Commissioner's Court. Both are on video. On May 17th, you injected our children with an experimental mRNA technology, supposed vaccine. The email that Dr. Cavazos sent to parents had two data information links, one to the FDA website and the other was to Pfizer website. Those links only went to the data that was in English. AISD consists of 46% Hispanic students, and these forms were not translated in Spanish for them. Therefore, they were not fully informed about the side effects and the risk involved. The fact that there are no long-term studies, the fact that this is an unapproved experimental injection, they were not informed that the fact that their children are now part of a medical experiment. Who from AISD approved this act of negligence? Who from AISD translated the risk and all the information to those with a communication barrier on site before they received this injection? Per U.S. Code 360 BBB3 titled Authorization for Medical Products for the Use in Emergency States, conditions of authorization for unapproved products are designed to ensure that individuals to whom the product is administered that they are informed of the significant known and potential benefits and risks of such use, and to the extent to which these benefits and risks are unknown. Did y'all do that? I don't think you did. And that they also have an option to accept or refuse administration of the product, and that is for anybody that works for AISD or any business. You do not have to take this experimental, whatever it is.
James Fritz. And then Heidi Fritz.
I want to read an excerpt by a gentleman by the name of Robert Greenleaf. He published an essay called The Servant as a Leader. He wrote that the servant leader feels a sense of duty to lead, which stands in sharp contrast to traditional leadership, where some may assume a leadership position purely out of a desire for privilege or power. Servant leaders understand that they intend to serve others. Public servants embrace the following qualities of servant leadership: being mindful of and caring for the underprivileged in society, prioritizing the growth and well-being of individuals and their communities, and displaying awareness, empathy, and foresight. Public servants are often expected to be inspirational individuals who motivate their teams or communities. I'm a public servant. I've been a firefighter paramedic for 22 years. I do what's best for the public regardless of age, race, religious beliefs, economic status, criminal, doesn't matter. I work for the public. They deserve my best every day I go to work. Just imagine if you were a patient of mine in the ambulance and I decided to do a treatment or give a medication I knew wasn't in your best interest. I did it anyway for personal gain or for some reward. Thankfully, none of you are in emergency management. I leave my family for 24 hours to take care of people I don't even know. They get my best regardless if I've eaten or slept during the night. I do this because I know someone
may survive the worst moment of their life based on decisions I make. Our kids have suffered because of your decisions. The arrogance, disrespect, and total disregard you have shown parents is sickening. You have all failed as public servants. We deserve better. And I want to say that I'm totally against giving vaccinations. I would never do it in my job. My department has participated in that. I would never give such a poison. I never support that. I certainly wouldn't give it to adults. I wouldn't give it to kids. And it's appalling that any fire department, for that matter, would even engage in that, especially in this city. We deserve better.
Heidi Fritz.
Cancel June 7th.
That will be Dylan Briggs after Heidi Fritz.
Hi, I'm Heidi. I go to Lamar High School, and just yesterday or the day before, after being denied soccer tryouts 2 days in a row, I wanted to try out for soccer once again for my sophomore year in high school. The head soccer coach for the girls told my counselor that I should be removed, and then I was told that it's because I didn't make the team. I didn't make the team specifically because I wasn't allowed to try out because I can't breathe in a mask. You took away my opportunity to play soccer after I couldn't play for 8th grade and my off-campus soccer team disbanded. I haven't gotten to play for a whole year. So I don't know how I'll end up being for soccer. And I honestly, when my mom told me that the mask stuff was hopefully going to end up stopping and June 4th was going to be that day where AISD would end up paying for what they were doing if they continued after that day, that gave me hope that I could actually go and enjoy my sophomore year and not have it taken away from me like my freshman year, which anyone who's entering high school would enjoy. Freshman year of high school, you only get that once in a lifetime. You can't get that back. You took that away from not only me, but a ton of other children, a ton of other students, and there's plenty of teachers that don't even get to see their students' faces. They don't get to see them at all. It's appalling. It's awful. It's terrible. It really shouldn't even be happening, honestly. But I have hope that I will have my sophomore year without all of this nonsense going on. Because I'd like to enjoy that instead of having to, once again, not have my sophomore year just like my freshman year. I'd like to enjoy high school. I'd like to live my high school years and be able to tell my future children, oh, hey, this is what I got to do when I was in high school, instead of having to tell them, oh, yeah, you know what? I got to miss most of my high school years. And it wasn't because of me. It was because there were people making decisions that they shouldn't be making. They don't have the right to do that. They don't. You don't get to decide for students what you think is best for them. That's up to their parents. That's up to my parents. You don't get to decide that for us. We're not your kids, and I'm sure you wouldn't like it if someone forced things onto your kids as well. I'm sure you would hate it. I'm sure you would stand up for your kids. And if not, then that's just terrible, really. So hopefully next year, things will be better. And we won't have to deal with this. And if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be standing here right now. I'm speaking on behalf of every other student whose lives have also been ruined. There's lives that have been taken. There's children who have to spend every day with their abusers at home. There's children who are committing suicide because of all this. It's terrible. I don't get to see my friends. I don't get to play soccer. I didn't get to enjoy my freshman year, and I didn't get to see my teachers. This by far has been the worst year I've ever experienced. And I only have my parents and the people who are actually standing up for the students. I only have them to thank that I've even been able to get up out of bed and do my schoolwork and be able to move on with the day. I have them to thank. I don't have the school board to thank or the school. You claim to care about children. You care about children so much that you're going to ruin their lives. That's not what caring is. It's not what it is. it honestly, I'm surprised I've been able to even get out of bed. It was hard, and it's still hard. I hate having to sit at a desk all day to do schoolwork that, for one, I should be doing at school, because school is for learning. It's not for injecting students or teaching them about different races and making them think, oh yeah, well, you know, my friends are black, or my friends are Hispanic, or my friends are Muslim. Do you think that I go up to people and say, oh yeah, I have a Muslim friend? No, I just say I have a friend. Students are being taught this. When I was 10 years old, I never ever looked at color. I didn't look at your race. I moved past all that and said, this is my friend. This is who I hang out with. We shouldn't be talking about different races. You can be who you are. That's not, the school shouldn't be teaching that. They shouldn't be showing kids that everyone's different. That's not how school works. You should be going to school to learn, to be taught things that you should be learning in adulthood, to be ready to move on to college, to be ready to just move on with your life, not learn about different races and where you come from. And yeah, it's terrible.
Dylan Briggs. Dylan Briggs. Do we have a Dylan Briggs in the room? Frank, do we have a Dylan Briggs online? Okay, we'll move on to Zulkis Carmen and then Kim Worley. Zulkis Carmen.
I have a question. Is there a chance that my son, who we did not sign up, can speak and take one of those spots?
I let him have my spot.
Oh, no.
No, I would.
No.
I would love to if he wants to.
Oh, no.
Yes, you want to? Is that
Is that okay?
with you folks?
Let him speak.
Let them both. Is that okay or not? Let them both speak.
So, did you ask me the question? If he would like to speak, he can speak for the same amount of time. Dylan, you may speak.
His name is Hayden.
Okay, Aiden, you may speak if you would like to come up to the microphone. That way everybody can hear you if they're watching online.
Last year, I was planning on having fun going to 7th grade, but I never got a chance to because this whole vaccine started. My sister was so excited to go to her high school this year, but she never got to go. Hello either. So, after.
That's okay. Take your time. How much you think?
So right now, we've been trying to make things more happier for us, but that hasn't been working out as well as I wanted it to. I've missed my friends a lot, and I've been wanting to see them all again when I wanted to go back to 7th grade, but I don't get to see any of them apparently. I can't, it's so hard for me to get in contact with them too. I have one friend that I get to hang out with, but that's not in person. I thought my 7th grade year was gonna be great. But this year, I barely learned anything because it's just so hard to understand what to learn and Zooms and everything. I mean, it'd be easier to learn if I was actually in school, even for my sister. No one understands. There's people out there that are also turning against each other. And leaving and, like my sister said, committing suicide and. I'm just missing everything that I wanted to happen. I missed all of it. Like I never even got I never got a chance. I have one more thing to say. And so, I hope this year we get to go back to school and have fun again. And be a normal kid. We don't want to wear these masks anymore, or like we just want to be ourselves. Like we want to go out and just, go places and. But apparently that can't happen. But it needs to.
We'll end this today.
Exactly. We need to end this today.
One email, you can end this today. For this poor boy.
Are you still speaking, Camille?
You know what?
You good? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
My brother, thank you.
Delcas Carmen, Miss Carmen,
Ms. Harmon? Yes, it's your turn to speak.
Miss
You may just
Carmen,
step
and
to the
then
mic.
after that will be Kim Morley, and then Kelly Joel.
And that mask better be off.
With all due respect, I like to play Dr. Hastings, Steve Hastings, and many doctors like him are telling us all the same.
Hello, I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, founder and CEO of the Hotze Health and Wellness Center in Houston, Texas. The so-called COVID-19 vaccine is not a vaccine at all. It's a dangerous experimental gene therapy. The Center for Disease Control, the CDC, gives the definition of the term vaccine on its website. A vaccine is a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease. Immunity is the protection from an infectious disease. If you are immune to a disease, you can be exposed to it without becoming infected. This so-called COVID-19 vaccine does not provide any individual who receives the vaccine with immunity to COVID-19, nor does it prevent the spread of the disease. It does not meet the CDC's own definition of a vaccine. That's why it's a deceptive trade practice under 15 U.S. Code, Section 41 of the Federal Trade Commission, for pharmaceutical companies who are producing this experimental gene therapy to claim that it's a vaccine. These pharmaceutical companies are lying to the public. The government health bureaucrats are also lying to the public by calling this treatment a vaccine. This COVID-19 experimental gene therapy is only designed to minimize your symptoms if you were to be infected with the COVID-19 virus. Let me re-emphasize that this COVID-19 experimental gene therapy does not meet the CDC's own definition of what a vaccine is. It does not provide immunity or prevent the spread of the disease. By referring to this therapy as a vaccine, the pharmaceutical companies are attempting to shield themselves because vaccine injuries or deaths are exempted by law from any product liability lawsuits. The United States health bureaucrats initiated Operation Warp Speed to fast-track the so-called COVID-19 vaccine. On December 11th, 2020, the FDA approved the Pfizer vaccine, and Moderna's vaccine was approved just a week later. Now, these so-called vaccines were approved without any published animal studies and without any long-term human studies. This means that individuals who get these so-called experimental gene therapy vaccine treatments are the guinea pigs. That's right. Humans will be the guinea pigs. These so-called vaccines, which are manufactured using cells derived from human babies that were aborted in the 1970s, should more accurately be called experimental gene therapy. They are untested, unproven experimental gene therapy that poses a much greater danger and risk to your health than the COVID-19. Moderna is a company, pharmaceutical company, a biotech company located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was founded in 2010 as Mode RNA Therapeutics. That's where they got the word Moderna. It has been developing experimental gene therapy using synthetic.
Kim Worley, then Kelly, Joel, and Jody Mueller. Miss Worley? Is there a Miss Worley here and not online waiting? Okay, Miss Joel, Kelly Joel.
Good evening. First of all, emergency use authorization is only used if there's not a preventative. And there is a preventative for COVID-19. It's budesonide, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, vitamin D, zinc. Dr. Bartlett in Odessa, he treated over 8,000 cases with budesonide, ivermectin, and antibiotics, and it works. I know for a fact because my boyfriend got it, and he was better in 3 days. And the vaccine is not a vaccine until the safety has been proven, and this one has not. And the most alarming thing is they don't know what it will do. And you are giving this to our children, and you are making it like it is something special for them to get. And these kids, I was there Monday. This little girl is just so proud of her little, injection. She doesn't know what it's going to do to her pubescent years. She doesn't know what it's going to do to her reproductive system because they don't know what it's going to do. They don't know what it's going to do if any of us has gotten it. And all the test animals have died. And you want to give it to our precious children. I don't understand this. I was at Commissioner's Court on Tuesday, and they were in the Tarrant County Fauci, what's his name, Vinny, was talking about how they're going to put up little pop-ups in our schools so the kids can go during their lunch break. And, they don't even, what if they have an adverse reaction at lunch? Are you going to be responsible for this? And he's also talking about having scholarships to college if you get this vaccine. Bribery. Against the law. And he's talking about a lottery system. And, so vaccine adverse events reporting system. You can go on openvaers.com/COVID-data. So less than 1% has been reported. We have got 4,057 deaths, 11,572 hospitalizations, 25,603 urgent care visits, 32,803 office visits, and 940 anaphylaxis. That is just 1% reported. Let's say 20% reports. That's 5 times. You're talking about over 20,000 deaths. That SARS COVID vaccine that I think the swine flu, after 25 deaths, they pulled it. And you're wanting to give this to our children. You're taking responsibility for our children. It's just unconscionable. And, it is. It's crime against humanity. I don't understand this. I mean, I don't know if you want your kids to get this. I'm praying for everybody. I'm praying for all y'all if y'all got it. But, you know, Sarah, I talked to you during the election, you know, and I'd already voted for you. And I'd asked you about the vaccines for our children, and you said, well, not now, but eventually. And you know what? I'd like to have my vote back. Thank you very much.
Jody Mueller. That's our last speaker for right now.
Hi there. My name's Jody, and I've spoke at the Tarrant County Commissioners, I believe, as of Tuesday, 15 times. I took a break for a little while. It's obvious they weren't listening, and then I came back this last Tuesday to talk about this harmful injection. So I'm going to read part of what I read that day. The collateral damage of the recent unlawful mask orders, and now the threat of harm because of this jab, has been immense and exponential. This is actually causing division between family members and even lifelong friends, even in the schools, like you just heard. And it's confusing to innocent children that are being injured. If you are all about education, all of you had better know what the ACE study is by Kaiser Permanente. And if not, you need to look it up. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. And that doesn't just mean the harm in their homes, it's harm by anyone that they're in contact with. So they have a score of 1 to 10 that these children can get. And half of you probably came from divorced families, because usually it was about 50% of us that did. You already have a score of 1, okay? You get emotional harm, now you got a number 2. You got parents that have lost their jobs because of this fake COVID, now you got a number 3. It goes on and on up to 10. School shooters are a score of 8 to 10. My children were harmed because of a PTA lady that drove my children to the airport in the middle of the night to help my abuser kidnap them. Not from this school, but another school. So I don't trust anyone on a school board because they didn't give a damn about my children that were kidnapped and given to an abuser. So this does not shock me at all. It might shock everyone else behind me. It doesn't shock me at all. I know where this is headed, okay? I know. It's to divide and conquer and to harm our children. That's what this is all about, all right? This willful and intentional harm to do to those that cannot wear this device, that don't like to wear this device, or that are against this injection is the most vile and inhumane of anything I've ever witnessed from the Freemason and cabal-controlled corporations such as the schools. The absolute worst of all is what it has done to children of all ages. The mask, the isolation, the segregation in their own classrooms by a piece of plastic, and especially the narrative that they can now be responsible for the killing of grandma and grandpa if they don't take the harmful injection with ingredients most normal, educated people wouldn't want in their worst enemy's pet. The live exercise from the Agenda 21 playbook has not surprised any of us back here that knew it was coming. What I didn't foresee, though, was how easy it would be for all of you to manipulate parents into marching their children in to be used as an experiment. Ironically, the same people you probably worship, the infamous National Institute of Health, shared this historical information on their own site, right here, quote, "Children as guinea pigs. Experimentation involving children is not a new phenomenon. Children have been used as research subjects in a diverse set of experiments, including the trials of new vaccines and efforts to understand normal pediatric anatomy and physiology. Concern about child participants in research is also not a new development. That's why we're here. For more than a century, critics of medical research have called attention to the fact that children and other vulnerable populations, pregnant women, prisoners, the mentally ill, have too often served as the unwitting and unwilling subjects of medical experiments. When you say that these parents are giving consent, are they really? Because you are not giving them full disclosure. I was out there also Monday. We got 9 carloads of children turned around. We saved about 16 children. pretty proud of that. One father couldn't believe it. He said it was a God thing that we were out there. And he took his 3 children back home. And their mother's a nurse. And he won't be coming back to get those kids vaccinated or injected. What's happening is they're not getting the full disclosure. They're not getting even the right language in these inserts. And I even went to go ask for an insert. I was threatened to be jailed because I asked for an insert. What if my children were out there and I wanted to know what was in it? I'm threatened with jail because I'm asking what the ingredients are? This is ridiculous. But the coercive control of fraud and manipulation, that's not consent. That's deceived consent.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda are action items. Our first action item is to consider motions to address COVID-19 protocols. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays. And at this time, we'd like to present our COVID protocol review for your consideration. I'll invite Dr. Hill to lead us in that presentation. Dr. Hill.
Thank you. Good evening, President Mays, board members, and Superintendent Cavazos. Again, here to discuss the COVID protocols as we've been discussing internally for a few weeks. It's just a little background information. In alignment with state and local authorities, protocols were put in place to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. AISD students and staff have done a diligent job at following those protocols and doing what's been asked of them to help mitigate that spread. Local and state COVID-19 cases are trending favorably for the district and for the area. The vaccine is widely available for students and staff opportunities for the vaccine has been there, and they've been taking advantage of that. Student opportunities for the first dose were on May 17th, and we continue to provide those opportunities throughout the summer. Modifications for protocols are being considered at this point.
I hope you guys are also aware that makes you.
The proposed modifications for the COVID-19 protocol
Hill.
effective May 26th include what
Hill.
you see on the left column.
Dr. Hill.
Dr. Hill?
Yes.
I'm sorry, just one moment.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate y'all's passion, I really do. We did give y'all an opportunity just to make sure that we can hear everything that's being presented to us. If you just please remain quiet while at least a presentation is going, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, President Mays. So the left column shows the current protocols, and the right column shows the proposed modifications to the protocols that are in place. And I'll go through this line by line for us, just for clarity. So the health screener that's currently in place, including temperature checks and other questions, would no longer be required. The wearing of masks would no longer be required. Contact tracing will no longer be required. Isolation of a confirmed COVID-19 case will still be required, and we would be posting notification of those. Hand washing would go back to normal operations, as well as cleaning and sanitizing. We will discontinue the use of physical barriers, and the COVID-19 testing center will remain open, is the one set of the proposals. We would, again, go back to normal operations with regard to limited or no in-person meetings, normal operations with regard to limited or no volunteers or visitors, normal operations for appointments. We'll go back to normal operations for closed campus lunch. COVID-19 leaves would return to the standard leave process that was in place prior to COVID. And other protocols and measures that are not listed in here because, again, they were pretty extensive, we would return to normal operations. Recommendation from administration is that the board approve these proposed protocols effective May 26th, and then we would continue to monitor what happens in the area with regard to that, and then reserve at least the thought to come back and discuss at that point. So with that, we'll take any questions or discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Do I have any trustees with questions and or comments? Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Mays. Thank you, Dr. Hill, for the information and the presentation. I'm happy to see the end of this coming. My question, so this is on the 26th, 6 calendar days from now. To 2.5 school days, so not much at the end of the year here. What would be the harm in doing it effective immediately instead of waiting until the 26th?
So I'll start that, address that. So I think that some things to think about and to put into context as was presented in this brief presentation. One, the protocols have been effective in our schools to mitigate the spread. They've been effective throughout the time that we've had them. We were very mindful of what we were implementing and adapting. And so they have mitigated the spread over time. The other is that as we look to the end of the school year, students have had the opportunity to get vaccinated, their first vaccination. Staff has received their opportunity to get vaccinated March the 8th. And so as that continues, then we're making that progress to this normalcy, which is why we're presenting this tonight. But I do think that as we haven't completely achieved the vaccination for opportunity for students, just started, that also plays a part in this path that we're following. And finally, I think that we have encouraged and been successful, quite frankly, at having students return. So just to remind us of context, March the 8th, when staff got vaccinated, we said that was a big piece of that puzzle to return to normalcy. We also waited for the effects of the continued spread of COVID and things like that, the numbers, all these things work together. And then we undid our hybrid schedule. So we've made those adjustments as we've progressed. But quite frankly, we've made a commitment to our staff and our students and our families to join us back at school for face-to-face instruction, and we've been successful at that, with the assurance that we will follow our protocols. And so with 3 days left of school, 2 of those are half days or early release for high schools, 1 is for elementary, that we're getting close to the end of school, and it would be appropriate to continue the protocols till the end of school. May 26th, we would undo those protocols. We wouldn't have these protocols in the summer school. We wouldn't have them in August. And I think we fulfill our commitment to continue the progress to return to normalcy as we've made it. So that's some of the rationale for why we would do it on the 26th.
Well, it's been a long time coming to get to this juncture. I'm happy that we're finally there. And I don't plan on pushing to have it done effective immediately. If that's the will of other colleagues, that's fine, but we are talking just a few days here when we're on the backside of more than a year-long, a 14-month-long pandemic. So I support you as our district CEO on the operations side. I respect what you have to say, and you are absolutely correct that as much as I don't like this thing either, it has been one of the mechanisms, along with the rest of the protocols, to have a large number of our families and student body population to come back. That is essential, and I do get that, this would be potentially turning our backs on them, and I don't want to stand in the way of that. We are at the end of this. This is a recommendation to do away with it all. I'm so happy that we're here to do that. I'm in full support of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Are there any other trustees with questions and/or comments? Mr. Hogg? I rejected you. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you, President Mays. Thank you for that question, Dr. Reich. And thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Mr. Hill, let me ask a question. When you say, just to make sure I'm fully clear, when you say normal operation, you were talking about pre-COVID standards, correct?
That's the lens through which we're looking.
Thank you. Want to make sure on that. You know, from the start, I wish we'd opened earlier. It's pretty prevalent on this board to try and get us to open earlier. I wish we'd gone through some certain things. You know, we can always look back on things we could do better, right? And I think we all know these are tough decisions, and sometimes they're not the right decisions. In full transparency, we know that. No one's dealt with anything like this before from where it's coming. Dr. Reich, I agree with you. Like, I'd like to see it effective, but I also look at the bigger picture of the end in sight. I'm glad to be having it end, because that's the key factor. We hear from, in full disclosure, parents and students on both sides of this. Never had more parents cry to me on the phone because their child is suffering every single day wearing a mask. It's heartbreaking. I also have parents crying out of pure fear from this. And it is split. Two things I do have a question on, and I still don't know if it's, the city still offers a COVID-19 testing center, correct? For people to be tested.
That's to my understanding.
And the county has some, and there's a couple. At one point, it seemed like every corner had a testing center. I don't understand, and I talked to Arkansas a little earlier about this, and I'd like to know more. I don't understand why we have a COVID-19 testing center. I think everyone has access, and I'm all for it. Talk to many parents, and I'm a big fan of choice, of people being able to choose. And my question, hold on a second, folks. My question is, they have a choice to get that. I don't understand why we are spending staffing on that to offer that for a COVID-19 testing center. Dr. Foster, could you give me a little more clarification?
Absolutely, Vice President Hogg. So just the context on our testing. The testing was offered an opportunity for all school districts in Texas by the state. And that was offered and free, the testing kits itself. And as we talked earlier and mentioned to Dr. Reich, that was also a piece of that puzzle, is that we would provide testing, that opportunity, so that we would mitigate the spread in our schools. Now, albeit, the reason we're having this discussion is because the numbers continue to trend down. We're seeing the end of this in terms of protocol, so absolutely appropriate. But it has been an important piece of that puzzle to mitigate the spread in our schools. Students and staff are not required to take a test. They're not required. It's optional. It's their choice. They can go take a test. It also helps people understand if they need to seek medical attention. And that's a service that we feel is important for that. So there's two reasons. One is to continue to mitigate the spread, continue that piece of the puzzle that we know, quite frankly, has been effective in our schools, because we come to the other side of this, and also to continue offering that service. I will say that we will evaluate that. And as demand or interest for testing diminishes, which I do anticipate, by the way, Mr. Hogg, that we'll see less interest or less demand for testing. We'll continue to evaluate that. And as we make appropriate decisions like we have, we'll discontinue the testing if there's no interest. There's no point in having staff there available for 1 or 2 tests a day and things like that. I completely agree with you. So that's the rationale, understanding that we would continue to evaluate, and as it's appropriate, we would discontinue that testing. If for whatever reason there's high demand, then we would continue that testing and continue to offer that as a mitigation strategy.
Thank you, Dr. Fassos. And listen, the COVID-19 testing center served a very strong purpose for this district when it was able to allow people to get that test. It was their choice to get the test, and it worked fast. I don't believe with school ending, we need that going in. You know, I know we're doubling, in essence, our summer school. I appreciate this board not falling to the idea of not opening school early and seeing some of our colleagues around neighboring districts that are going till June 18th or later for the regular school year because they did not open when we did, or they delayed their initial opening by a couple of weeks. I do think, you know, that COVID testing center is not the best use. You know, as we have school going out over 60, 70% of our staff is going to be out for the summer by us still providing that. I just don't see the push on that. And then the last clarification, we are not posting the COVID-19 numbers for the whole district on the web page, the dashboard that we're posting. We're not doing that. But then the clarification, the points will be made. How are we required by law to notify when someone's sick for, I think the example you and I talked about earlier was measles or something like that? What are the rules we have to, by law, follow for that?
Yeah, there are some situations where by law we have to notify parents of a case in a school. This notification that we're talking about for COVID is one that we have done throughout the whole process, if you will. And that's posting a letter that says there's a case at the school site or at a department, et cetera. We want to continue that so that people have that information. It's not contact tracing, it's not quarantining, it doesn't lead to any of that. It simply leads to information that we feel is important for people to have. The other point in that is that as we move forward, these letters or these notifications will be just that. There won't be any action that's required by the school district. Now, if it's a positive case, it's a different story. There has to be some isolation to that and mitigation of that. But just as Dr. Hill mentioned, we will not be doing the health screeners, the temperature checks, the things that would lead to maybe more notification and things like that. So it simply is an opportunity to notify an individual family or campus that there is a case. We've been doing that all along. But to your point, the dashboard that reports all this information and quarantine, all that, that will be discontinued May the 26th as well, because there won't be any contact tracing or quarantining and all that. So all of that will be discontinued.
Thank you, Dr. Fassos. And the last question, I appreciate the dashboard going away. I have questions about how we notify if we're doing this. Is it really in the best interest? You always have concerns. Does it create a scarlet letter? Do people start hunting, which they did early on in COVID, for who that young man or woman is that has it? I've heard the stories of other parents blaming other kids for bringing it in. So sometimes, while I think by law we do have to have some notification, I do think we have to be very cautious over our notification. Since we've started making some of these protocols and in place, what has our percent in person gone back up to of students currently? And I'm
Yes, sir.
okay with the ballpark.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
an
totally okay with the ballpark.
So that attended, and this, it gets complicated, but I'll try to make it really simple. The last 6 weeks that have attended at least one day, okay, and I know that sounds weird, but it's just at least come to school one day. I think we're up to what, Michael, 90?
It is over 80, close to
80, close to 90%.
Okay.
That have actually come. Now, do they have perfect attendance? No. Do they come every other day and all that kind of stuff? That we run into that. But that have actually stepped foot in the building, that's I think a big accomplishment, because it's returning to that normalcy.
Perfect, thank you. And I think we all know up here, the more we have in person, the better students are learning, because they are suffering. And while remote learning works for a small portion of our students, I do not think it works for a majority. So while I don't agree with all these items, I do agree with lifting the protocols, and I appreciate staff for working on this and getting to that point and lifting this protocol, because that's where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Mays. Had follow-up, and just to add on to that, the baseline, we were looking at less than 50%. So it was very effective, a dramatic increase in getting kids back in person with the protocols and the choices. So I think that speaks volumes. So to be clear, regarding masks, that's one of the things that will go away as a mandate. They will still be optional, right? If teachers, staff, children choose to wear them, they'll still be allowed to. It's optional.
That's
right?
correct. It's optional. It will not be required.
And so what I think that's the appropriate way to go, because there's different comfort levels as we've seen just everywhere in society. So for those that are choosing and come back in the fall or summer school choosing to still don a mask, what are we looking at as far as a district from a disciplinary standpoint, a caring standpoint, empathy standpoint of potential bullying either direction? Because this is something that is a different category than what we've had specifically. So if you could just speak to that just a little bit.
Yeah, so I think we would attempt to, it's really about educating the kids and getting the comfort level and with kids and staff. And so I think that's the approach that we would take initially, is to really educate, continue to educate and get kids and others to understand that that's just a preference. Beyond that, we would just handle it normally with the way we'd handle student code of conduct violations. But again, keeping the lens that this is all new to all of us. And so.
Right, and I'm obviously a little bit biased being in this position for this school district, but I think our kids will be just fine with it. I think they will treat each other selflessly and compassionately. I think our faculty, our staff, they will as well. I think in general, kids do it better than adults. So I'm just putting that out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Mr. Chapa.
Thank you, President Mays. I don't have any comments on the presentation. At this time, I'd like to move to approve the proposed modifications to the COVID-19 protocols effective May 26, 2021.
Okay, got a motion by Mr. Chapa, a second by Mr. Hogg. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. All present vote in the affirmative. Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Hill. Okay, the next item on our agenda for action is considering the 2021-2022 Student Code of Conduct. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays. And so tonight we also bring for your consideration the 2021-2022 Code of Conduct. We've had an opportunity to visit with our governance committee on this, and we had it scheduled for last board meeting, and we moved it to this board meeting. But there are some routine type of changes that were recommended by our legal department, by changes in rules and laws. And so it's for your consideration tonight. Dr. Hill has a brief presentation to take us through the Code of Conduct for the following school year. Dr. Hill.
Yes, thank you. So we'll continue. So just a little bit about the process before we get into the specifics. The campus administration, central administration, including teachers, parents, students, had several meetings over a couple of months to review the current Code of Conduct as we do every year. It was reviewed by the various departments as well to see which changes would be recommended for the document as we move forward. Those reviews always look through the board policy lens of AE Local, which states that the board believes that the school environment truly impacts student achievement. And so that was the lens through which we looked at all of the modifications to the document. The four categories that, if you could summarize the changes or the recommended changes, would be addressing virtual/remote setting, threat assessments and social emotional learning, safety protocols, and just addressing some definitions and other cleanup in the document. Some of the recommended changes include rules applied to campus-based alternative and remote learning. And so if we're in the remote setting, again, those rules would apply. We're recommending adding language to impact that. Students are responsible for content contained on their devices found during legal searches. Changing the word school to campus, and then changing the word handbook to rules for more alignment and just more clarity. Defining clearly what a threat assessment is, because that came on the scene a few years ago, and we're just clarifying what that definition is. Determining when to conduct a threat assessment, and then adding social and emotional learning staff to assist as a corrective action before we go to remove student or take further action, depending on what the offense is, but adding the SEL staff as a part of that corrective action. We recommend deleting language referring to the requiring of masks and face coverings at all the locations in the document that were added recently. Just again, those recommended changes are reviewed by administration, they're reviewed by legal office, and again, the board governance committee has had an opportunity to review those changes. That being said, the administration recommends the approval of the 2021-2022 Student Code of Conduct as it's presented and discussed.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Mr. Chapa.
Thank you, President Mays. As Dr. Hill discussed, this has come before the board before. We've gotten feedback on this. This is part of our annual process of reviewing the Code of Conduct. And as Mr. Hill or Dr. Hill described, the changes are mostly highly technical changes, some wordsmithing. The most substantive changes I would put in the category of now aligning the Code of Conduct to the rolling back of protocols that the board just voted on. As the trustees will remember, many of the protocols that we put into place during COVID were made through changes to the Code of Conduct, including masking and a few other protocols. And so those are being deleted to effectuate the action the board just took, effective for the next school year. From the governance committee's perspective, that's all that I have. I don't know if there's further discussion, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. I don't see any lights. Dr. Reich?
Yeah, thank you, President Mays. You might be able to answer this, Mr. Chapa, if not Dr. Hill. I just don't recall, and I apologize. We in the committee, we were discussing rules as the term related to district policy, campus procedures. Did we get the clarification on that we were looking for?
There was an email, I believe, that was sent clarifying that. Dr. Hill, can you speak more to that?
Yes, let me try to.
I can summarize it, but I don't want to misspeak.
It was.
Well, it was switching out handbook for rules.
Yes.
And we examined that and determined that rules is appropriate.
Rules is appropriate, yes.
And not handbook. So the switch that we made on committee, or that we discussed on committee, is the same one we're recommending tonight.
Okay. Thanks.
There's no further discussion. I would move that we adopt the Code of Conduct as presented.
Okay. Got a
Second.
motion? Motion by Mr. Chapa, second by Mrs. Fowler. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Okay. All present vote in the affirmative, and motion passes. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda, we move to our discussion action items. First, consider moving June 15th, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting to June 17th, 2021. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mason. This is an item that we bring before the board. The board calendar was set with anticipation there would be SLI and board training and things like that. And we had moved it originally to a Tuesday. We're recommending that for your consideration to move it back to a Thursday, June the 17th, as appropriate. So that's our recommendation.
Okay, this is a discussion action item. Is there a motion or any discussion? Dr. Reich.
Move to approve the meeting change date.
A second.
Okay. Got a motion by Dr. Reich, a second by Mr. Wilbanks. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, all affirmative, all present vote in the affirmative, and the motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Wilbanks, hold on 1 second. You are hot. Okay, there we go. So our next discussion action item is consider 2021-2022 Board of Trustees meeting calendar. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mason. We bring the next school year, 21-22 Board Trustees meeting calendar. We sent that out and had an opportunity, you all have had an opportunity to review that. As with any board calendar, just like we did right now, just the previous item, we can always adjust those. We bring them back to the board for changes to the calendar. But we recommend that the 21-22 Board of Trustees meeting calendar that you have be adopted.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Mrs. Fowler.
Thank you, President Mays. I move to approve the 2021-2022 Board of Trustees meeting calendar as presented.
Okay. Second? So I've got a motion by Mrs. Fowler, a second by McMurrough. Congratulations on your first second. Any discussion? Yeah. Okay, seeing no discussion, please vote.
Motion by Sarah Mack.
Okay, motion passes. Majority, 6 yes, 1 no. Motion passes.
No voting.
I said no voting. There you go. Okay, Mrs. Benjamin, motion passes in the affirmative, all 7 voting. Okay, our next discussion item is our 2020-2021 school operations update. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays. And I think I'll start this presentation by saying that as our previous item with May 26 being the end of the protocols and things like that, this is the last school operations that we'll put on as a normal item on the board meeting. I know it's heartbreaking, but this is this is an important moment of also that closure, that next step. We've done this now for, well, Tracy would know exactly how long we've done it, but we've done it for about a year. And so this is the last school operation report of this sort that we'll be presenting. So, Dr. Brown.
Oh, yes, I'll actually come take that after we're finished. Good evening, President Mays, members of the board, and of course, Dr. Cavazos. Thank you for the opportunity to present in this fashion our final school operations update for the school year. And as we have begun since the summer of last year, our guiding principles, we've ensured that we prioritize these as we've made decisions for the district throughout the course of the pandemic. So today, at a glance, we're going to just provide an update on AISD and Tarrant County COVID data. We'll also talk about the vaccination event, then partnership with the Arlington Fire Department, and then share some information on Arlington ISD's the Care Clinic, which is open, and it's a great opportunity for our teachers and students. And then Dr. Wirtz will close out with a summer learning update for the board. So the first part of our COVID update is our self-reporting cases by month. And as you can see, we've continued to trend downward as it relates to reported cases. And so this is when someone either has COVID-like symptoms, they've been exposed to someone who tested positive, or they themselves have tested positive for COVID. And as you can see, midway through May, we've had only about 70 self-reports so far. And our dashboard was updated just this past Tuesday. On our dashboard, we have 1 staff case resulting in at least 40 who are quarantined, not because of that case, but 40 who are quarantined, 16 students, and almost 500 students who are currently actively under quarantine. And you can see the data continues to trend downward as it relates to our data dashboard. Just had a slight increase in quarantine students that we reported on Tuesday. So since the last board update, we do have some additional data for you. We've had a total of 45 reported cases since our last board update. 6 were asymptomatic and resulting in a little bit more than 400 quarantined staff and students. So just a couple of other additional district data to share. Our rapid testing center, of course, our site is still up and running, and we have administered 84 tests since our last board meeting. None of those have resulted in a positive case so far. However, over the past 7 weeks, we've been pleased to see that we've reported fewer than 4 cases per week, which is really a great trend. And our staff to student ratio used to average 1 staff member to 2 students. Now it's 1 staff member to 10 students. So it shows you those vaccinations with our staff did shift that ratio as well. So as we talk about Tarrant County metrics for safer in-person instruction, won't go through those. We pretty much know these right now. That 7-day moving average positivity rate has gone down. It's now at 4%. The virus spread, 1,123 cases, which also has gone down. And then our COVID-like illness and COVID hospitalizations have remained steady at 2% and 4% respectively. Our vaccination event with the Arlington ISD and Arlington Fire Department 2.0 was on Monday, May 17th. And just to share a little bit of an update about that process, we had that, of course, was for 12 years, students who are 12 years and older. Their parent had to be present with them. And of course, parents were invited, as well as any of our staff members who chose to get vaccinated. And that was held at the athletics complex. And so it was a great partnership with the fire department and staff in our schools, staff in our district who were able to put our clinic together. So the fire department did vaccinate almost 1,400 students, staff, and or parents during that event. And that second dose will be administered on June 7th, and we plan to support that vaccination event as well. So we've shared a little bit about the culture of care during this pandemic, and our team has worked fervently to really make sure that we provided additional supports to students and to their families as they were experiencing the pandemic. And so we're really, really pleased about the care clinic being open here in Arlington. The counseling team has worked diligently to really be able to try to secure licensed professional counselors that would be able to provide those mental health therapeutic services for our teachers and for our students. And so it is now open. These are free counseling sessions and really just helping individuals develop, self-awareness, maintain healthy habits, just improve their overall physical or mental health. That care clinic is open through June 30th, and then we'll reopen the beginning of August for the 21-22 school year. And students can be referred to the care clinic, and teachers also can self-refer as well. So this can be a virtual session, or it can be in person, which right now we're temporarily housing at the PDC. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Dr. Wirtz, our Chief Academic Officer.
Good evening, President Mays, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos. I'm here this evening to share with you a brief update about our summer programming and really primarily to share with you specifically about how the enrollment trends are kind of happening in terms of planning for that program. So tonight I'm going to talk specifically about pre-K through 12. As you know, we're offering summer programming services for students in all of those grade levels. And on this slide, you can see specifically how the enrollment is looking at each of the designated campuses, both for the elementary and junior high levels. As a reminder, not every single school is hosting the programming. We have multiple schools that will go to one specific site, but where each of those sites are notated, the total number of students that are registered or who have applied to participate this summer are notated on the right-hand side of the name of the school. The locations, the numbers that you see there represent both the bilingual ESL kinder first grade programming as well as pre-K and also remote numbers. And we do not expect to have to shift or reduce any of the number of campuses that will be offering services based on the enrollment trends that we're seeing. There are some campuses that have higher enrollment trends, and so campuses where there are 300 or more students that are going to be attending the summer programming, we will be hiring an assistant principal to support the programming at the school. This is just a breakdown for you to see what the numbers look like by grade level bands and specifically the environments and programming sessions in which they will be participating. So as you can see, we have about a little over 6,200 students that have registered to participate in the elementary levels, about 1,600 for junior high, and about 455 for pre-K 4. This totals around 8,326. You may be asking yourself, why is there some discrepancy between that number and the other two numbers? And the reason being is because there's some duplication in some of the numbers in the registration. The team is in the process of correcting that. We believe it's about 126, something like that. So they will be reconciled, but the number really hovers around 8,200 total. What you'll notice in the sessions is that they're broken down by what we're offering. So for example, on the right-hand side where it says grades 7th and 8th only, we have a 10-day grade recovery program for students that goes between June 17th and June 18th, and there's about 98 students that are wanting to participate in that. And as you go through each of those different each of those different rows, you'll see specifically which program is being offered and the number of students that intend to participate and how that all breaks down in terms of the total number of students of 8,200. You'll also notice that the great majority of our students will be participating in person. We do, however, have a few that prefer to participate in a virtual environment, which we will continue to provide. For grades 3 through 6, that's about 500 students. Grades 7 and 8, it's a little over, close to 350. And then we do have some primary grade students who will be participating remotely through our LMS known as Seesaw, and that's a little over 120 students. Applications and recommendations to participate in summer programming increased significantly since even last Friday. The numbers I'm providing with you tonight are current as of the closing of that process. We had 2,000 students register or be recommended for participation between Friday last week and Wednesday yesterday. So yesterday was the final day to make the recommendation, and so the numbers that you're seeing today are reflect all that up to the current place. We will be focused on making sure that we provide services to the students who have the greatest needs, and if there has to be a determination about volume based on staffing, we will give priority to students who have the greatest need first, and any decisions about students who won't be eligible to participate, those notifications will go out at the same time. So what this actually update should say, we actually alter the date this afternoon. It's at May 24th. We will on May 24th notify those who are being admitted as well as those if there is not space. And then finally, I wanted to give you a sense about what's happening in high school. We of course have 2 sessions like we always do, session 1 and 2. High school programming offers opportunities for kids to recover credit where there was a failure, or to accelerate, meaning take courses so that they can kind of get ahead in terms of their graduation plans. The numbers you see in front of you kind of give you the breakdown of which students are trying to participate in which type of program in each of the 2 sessions. And then of course we have summer dual credit where students can take courses in conjunction with Tarrant County College to earn college credit and high school credit at the same time. And this just lets you know the volume of students in each of the high schools and about percentage of those that are actually participating in dual credit. High school numbers are pretty consistent to the way they've typically been. We're still evaluating that drop number tonight. Actually, we were working on that actually this evening. But for pre-K-8, you can see there's a significant difference from prior years. Typically, we have about 1,200 students that participate in summer programming, and right now we have about 8,200, so it's quite a big jump. So any questions I can answer for you, or Dr. Brown?
Thank you, Dr. Wertz. Before we ask questions, can you just please repeat that last sentence?
So usually, summer programming, our average enrollment in summer programming for pre-K-8 is usually around 1,200 students, and this year, right now, we have 8,200 that are expressing interest in attending.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Dr. Reich.
Okay, thank you, President Mays. I guess since you're there, I'll start with you, Dr. Wertz. I do have some questions for you as well, Dr. Brown. So can you help me understand, is there a distinction, a difference between those that applied versus those that were recommended for summer school? Is that truly a distinct process, or is it kind of the same?
Well, it's very similar in terms of the criteria that we're looking at. It's just that there's multiple pathways that students could actually be recommended. Some can be from parents, some can come from teachers, but the criteria that we use to identify the most students the most at need are the same. And just as a reminder, we had several indicators that we used to kind of assign point values towards students based on how they've been performing throughout the school year, including their screeners, just a variety of information points that we could use to triangulate where the most struggling students were. And that list of students we provided to the school so that we made sure the students that were really at need were being invited. But that did not necessarily mean that a parent couldn't also, of their own volition, choose to ask to send their child. If we have space for everybody and we have the staff to have everybody come, we have every intention on having everyone come. If for some reason there is a challenge around that area, then we have to make choices, then we're going to choose to serve the students who are of greatest need.
And that's a good segue to one of my other questions. On the issue of space availability, coming off of COVID, we've talked a lot, obviously, about remediation efforts and COVID slide, et cetera. So, and the ramping up of summer school to try to circumvent that, mitigate that. So why would we have, would it just be the availability of staff as far as the space availability? Because to me, I'm thinking we take everybody possible.
Right, it's not, doesn't have anything to do with the physical space. It has to do with having teachers to teach students. So we've worked closely with HR to recruit. As you know, you've approved a higher pay rate, but recruitment is still an effort that we're trying to work through. It's still a challenge. So the only reason why there would be any kind of change in terms of allowing all students to come would be the number of staff that we can have to serve students. So
Can you tell us where you are in that process now as far as what your initial target and goal was versus?
I don't have that number on me, but I can share that with you.
Okay. Yeah.
We're right now, and I mentioned I worked with my team today to try, now that we have the final numbers, because it just closed yesterday, to try to evaluate what the gap actually is. And so I don't have that completely finished yet, but we started that process.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you had the crystal ball in motion a few weeks ago as far as targeting potentially versus you just had a flood of 2,000 in a couple of days, which obviously changes whatever crystal ball you had. So.
I will say we planned based on the numbers that we knew that we're going to qualify for inviting, but I'd have to go back and look and see what the gap is. So I'm happy to get you the information.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious. Yeah, we've got to make sure that our any and all kids, if possible, are taken care of.
Sure.
And with that, that's a good segue into another question, which is.
Dr. Reich, I'm sorry, Dr. Cavazos wanted to input.
I just wanted to add
Yes.
something because I think it's important, and we may not have mentioned this just to set the context, because I think the context is important. This is one piece of the effort. And so summer school is important. It doesn't fix all the problems of the world.
Absolutely.
Never has summer school.
Right.
But it is an important offering and opportunity for students. And so if we have to, because of staffing or otherwise, limit, we don't want to limit that. But we also know this will be a multi-year effort. So I anticipate this will be another summer school discussion this time next year approximately. But there's a whole slew of different strategies that we really are going to have to implement throughout this next school year, really.
Right.
So I just want to kind of set that context, because we get, I do too, by the way, ask a lot of questions and hyper-focus a little bit on summer school, when in reality it's just a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
And I think it put it in the equation of recovery. It's just the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're all very interested in what type of slingshot strategies you'll have for the fall. I know you're already working on that, how to differentiate that, how you take a kid that is wanting to go into pre-cal, maybe didn't need summer school, wasn't identified as summer school, but in fact, they're not going to have the algebra skill set that they probably could have had it not been COVID, to get them up to pace right away in pre-cal, and so that they're not just blown away and set up for failure in pre-cal. So looking forward to all of that. Your job is absolutely not easy, and thank you for everything that you do, both of you, putting into it. So I have spoken at just about every meeting regarding the mental health and social emotional aspects, and with the lens of summer school as well. That we've got to get our kids right and make sure they're right in the head and at home. So is there a mental health check, a component of that woven into summer school, or is it summer school as usual? Is it a 2.0?
No, there's an SEL, a social emotional learning programming, that's going to be embedded into the coursework that kids will participate in as part of their schedule.
Okay.
So that will be available. And then, as Dr. Brown mentioned, for students who need therapeutic services, we will have the care center open for quite some time. That's consisting of about 41 licensed therapists that we have in the district that will be free services to students as
Yeah.
well outside of the
That's
school day.
awesome stuff. So those, the SEL that is woven in will, the teachers will have the ability at that point in that process, it'll be pretty much an embedded process that if they identify a child in that process, that they can do that referral if it's beyond their scope as an
Referral can happen
educator.
anytime. We're also hiring counselors to assist in the summer programming.
Okay.
And so there will be services that a normal counselor would provide as school counselor. There will be SEL programming that will take place in the classroom as part of their daily schedule. And then, of course, there's therapeutic services that are available should a referral need to be made.
Okay, great. And this is the last one I have for your part of the presentation. It's actually a little bit of a tangent. I'm curious, though, because I'm sure you've got not complete numbers, but pretty close. What are we looking like as far as kids that aren't able to graduate compared to previous years because of their slippage?
I don't have that number on me right now, and the reason I say that is because this last week of school, a lot happens because of the committee work that takes place. So students who, for example, only pass 3 of their STAR exams and they're missing an exam or 2, we can go ahead and pass them through a committee, and all that work is happening now, and that's very typical. So usually this is the moment where high school kids are literally crossing the finish line.
Right.
I can get you updated numbers and send them to you about where we're sitting today, but every day it's more kids. So I'd have to compare it to last year, and I haven't pulled that number.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious. I know that there's been at the high school level a lot of educators that have said, I sure hope it's not like last year, and I hope there's going to be mutiny, to use one in particular's words. So I was just curious what that looks like. And okay, thank you, Dr. Wirtz. Dr. Brown, I do have a couple of questions. So on the CARES program, which is wonderful and obviously so needed, on that student referral process that you were talking about, that the staff can self-refer, so can students self-refer as well, or does that have to come through the parent first, or what does that look like
So
for a
my
student that
understanding,
needs
and
help?
Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, that the student, the parent or the staff member can refer a student. Is that correct,
Yes,
Stephen?
the only thing that we have to keep in mind is because it's a therapeutic service, there are HIPAA laws attached to it.
Right.
And so students that are underage, their permission from their parent will have to be provided because it's a therapeutic service.
Right.
But that referral can come directly from the family, or it can come from a teacher or a staff member.
Okay. And a theme that I have heard over the course of this year for those that have been struggling is, well, I didn't know about that. Our survey that shows that we're really trying to get a handle on this and we care for these kids. I've had several say, I didn't know that. I've talked to a lot of students and that aren't in a good way, and they've said, I didn't know that existed, and I really don't know what that process was, and I couldn't tell them that. But my point is to communicate this, which is gold. What are we doing to communicate to make sure that everybody is aware of this and has the access for this opportunity?
I can say we're full. We've had a overwhelming response. We can serve up to 120 cases, and we have had lots of people registering to enroll, and we work closely with Anita's department, the communications department, to get that out, and we can still put that out there, because just because a student receives services from someone, from a therapist, for example, or a counselor, 1 or 2 sessions doesn't mean that then a space doesn't become available and things like that. But yes, we've actually had we're actually very happy with the response. It's filling up. So that's the positive thing.
That is.
In response to your question, though, we do want to make sure that every student knows it's available.
Yeah.
And so we will continue to work with Anita's department, the communications department, and with counselors and campuses to make sure they have the flyers and the information that goes home to families. And I'm happy to visit with Ms. Foster again about maybe, sending out another notification about it if that's a need.
And obviously, in anything that we've tried to do from a governance level, and I think that you have done from an operational level very well, is building capacity. What is our ceiling for this right now? Before we have a wait list and we have way more, which I'm fearful of, more demand than we have supply.
It's very possible that we would have more demand. We have 41 staff members who are licensed practitioners who can actually offer services, and it's offered during certain hours, certain days of the week that students can participate. We don't have the staff that have the actual licensure that makes it possible for us to have it open all day, every day, and have it. We don't have that kind of service. Our intent behind the design was not to supplement. It was to supplement services that are available in the community, not to supplant them, so to speak.
Right.
So if we do not have, if for some reason we come to a place where a student needs services and we don't have the slot available, then we will refer them to a place where they can actually get assistance. But yeah, the volume, as you know, is pretty significant. And our efforts to open the center was to try to mitigate that and make it available to families for free, which, as we know, is typically not the case. But there is demand.
Yeah, and I'm sure contracting is something that has been in your conversation. And obviously, it's a great use of those federal dollars that are coming. But with that, we're not the only district. And I know from the supply side there, the resources are limited as well. So hopefully we'll be able to tap into those kind of things. I thank you very much. I'm hopeful and would like to hear, just updates on what those numbers are, what they're looking like, as well as, without violating any kind of HIPAA things, getting into, and not necessarily at the full board level here at the meeting, but maybe just through memorandums or something, information related to kind of stratifying what those cases look like to see just in trends. That might be something as a district we look at in presenting out to the state at the national level as well, what the impacts of COVID-19 have been specifically, and what the needs are in social emotional, because I think we could be, if we build it that way on the front end, we can be able to articulate what that looks like and be an exemplar for other districts and maybe guide achievement, not just for us, but for others. So I would recommend that.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Mrs. McMurrough.
Okay, I also have a question about the CARES Clinic, which I'm very excited about as well. I think this is a huge step in the right direction with prioritizing mental health, not just for our students, but for our staff. And my question is in regards to that. So we've got summer school going on. This has been a year like no other. Will our teachers and staff have ample time outside of school hours for these sessions? I'm assuming that, that's going to be worked out.
Right. So when you say teachers, you're referring to them as patients or as providers?
Well, you said that this is going to be offered to teachers, students. I just want to make sure that they will have ample time outside of school hours for a session.
Yeah, sure. So all the session times that will take place, they'll be available for teachers. If a session's available after hours, that's definitely a possibility, as well as students. So they're not having to make a decision between whether I need to be in class or have a session. The thing that we have to keep in mind is that the sessions are being provided by the licensed practitioners that are actual AISD employees. We're really blessed. We have 41 in our system, I think 41 or 42. So those individuals have volunteered to participate and provide their service. We're of course compensating them, but at the same time, they're able to do their day-to-day work and then help in the evening as well.
Great,
So,
thank you. And I also want to note that our campus counseling staff is phenomenal.
They are.
Everyone has had to really repurpose themselves this past year. in regards to our roles and how we spend the school day. And I'm really hoping, in all the talk that we've had tonight about normalcy this fall, I'm really, really hoping that we can let our counselors truly be counselors this year, because as we've learned, it is a priority. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. McMurrough. Mr. Wilbanks.
Thank you, President Mays. And I think Dr. Reich covered a lot of my questions. Dr. Wirtz, but just to be clear and make sure I heard everything correctly, the windows closed as of yesterday, I guess, for signing up for summer school or recommendations. And looking at your chart by campus, especially in the elementary, there's a wide variety. And you said non-acceptance letters will go out tomorrow.
The 24th.
The 20.
That slide is incorrect. We updated it before the meeting.
Yeah, you said it was 24th. Oh, the 24th. Okay. Okay. All right. So, all right. That clears up that clarification. But so before you send out a non-acceptance letter, are we doing anything like if they're not accepted into say John's Elementary because it's full, but a nearby campus is not? What are we doing to kind of level the demand at each campus so that we can serve the maximum number of students possible?
We will offer space to any student wherever there's space there. That the only issue that we have to work through is transportation because of the way that it's designed. Certain schools are transported by hubs to the campus where they're going to be attending, because it's like you might have 3 campuses that are near one and they all go to the same one. But we won't deny services to a student who's eligible or where we have space for it. We'd have to mitigate that challenge should it present itself.
Right.
But I'm really not anticipating that that's probably going to be the issue. It's really going to be about staffing and placing staff at the right location. So, for example, if I know that at school X I have more kids there than I do teachers, but I have hired a teacher and I don't really need them at another campus, we can transfer them to a location where the students are there, because the physical spaces, there's plenty of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's obviously
Right.
the better strategy. We can move a teacher around to level versus having a bus. But in rare cases, if a parent was denied and then offered to transport their children to another,
Oh, yeah. That's not an
no
issue.
problem. And you mentioned staffing concerns. And I think your question was, or the reply to Dr. Reich was that you're still working through that and wouldn't have a good idea of where we are. But is there any additional insight you can say on which grade levels or which type of resources you're having trouble trying to staff?
I'm not trying to articulate that how grave or anything that it is. All I wanted to articulate is that if there's a reason why we had to reduce numbers of students, it would only be because of teachers and staff hiring. We're in the process of, now that we've closed registration, we're in the process of comparing registration numbers against staff hiring that's already occurring, which we're still in the process of doing to understand whether there's a gap. But don't necessarily, I don't want to articulate this idea that it's a big problem yet, because that we don't necessarily know, because we're still in the hiring process. I just wanted to articulate that if there was a reason why any kind of reduction or if someone wasn't accepted, which was in the presentation, the reason that would ever exist is because there wasn't staff to do it, and we would have to focus on the most at need students. Because as I said, while we tried to articulate which students are probably the most ideal candidates for summer programming, we do know that there are parents and that really feel like their students could benefit from time in school in the summertime, and we didn't want to not offer that opportunity. But if we have to pick and choose because of staffing reasons, we have a process that we'll do that with. But I couldn't tell you exactly how bad that gap is yet, or if it exists significantly until we analyze it, and my team's actually doing that as we speak.
Yeah.
So I can share that with you once we know.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Yeah.
And once you have that settled, getting more insight onto that. So my final question is, going back to the overview presentation you made about the strategy, I have no doubt that you're putting together an awesome plan that puts together current best practices. And as Dr. Cavazos mentioned, this is just one small piece in the overall arching plan that you shared with us last time. And the thing to understand is, for those of us familiar with summer school programs across the country, oftentimes in the past they've been maligned for not being something akin to sending a kid off to the corner to do a worksheet. Obviously, this is not that. So can you share a little bit more, if it's not tangential to this conversation, of at the elementary school level, what that entails? One of the concerns I have is, kids, this isn't going to be, what's the hours, 4 hours, 6 hours? It's not 6 hours of intensive academic work. The kids are going to be having fun, correct?
Oh yeah, so there's 90 minutes of literacy, 60 minutes of math. They also have social emotional learning component, and they also have a, I almost want to call it a free hour, but it's not really a free hour, it's like specials. They're going to be engaged in enrichment with their teacher around topics that they are naturally inclined or interested in doing. It will be differentiated by each classroom, because teachers will be able to lean into their own ideas and talents, and it will happen also as part of that schedule. So yeah, we want to engage kids, and it's summer, and so we want them to feel inclined to come for their academics, but we also want it to be enjoyable and have them engaged in enrichment opportunities as well. So that's all part of the schedule.
Yeah, so it's not sitting in a classroom. They'll be outdoors, actively learning, and be about, the cycle of a plant or the parts of a, if it's science-based or...
The teachers design what the experience will be for the kids. We provide the curriculum and the lesson plans and things to help them, but it's, the teacher decides makes those decisions professionally. They'll definitely be learning in the classroom, but there's nothing to stop a teacher from taking kids outside and teaching them traditionally like they would in an environment where they can leverage the world around them to teach. It's not designed to be a worksheet-driven kind of summer school. It's teaching, it's small group instruction, guided reading, all the things that we would normally want to see during the school day, but focused around standards that build the blocks to help them accelerate some of their learning and to close some gaps that may exist. So that's the way we've kind of designed it. It's but we will encourage and allow teachers to, what I call the art of teaching versus the science of it. Let them leverage the art that they're good at to connect with the kids that are sitting in front of them.
Well, given the numbers we already have, it sounds like it's and that's a propitious sign for the success of this program. And if we can continue to serve even more than what was the number, 8,200, great. And I think that's a good start to what's going to be a long, hard effort to counteract and prevent the lifelong generational loss that could occur because of COVID. And kudos to your team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbanks. Mrs. Fowler.
Thank you, President Mays. Dr. Wertz, talking about the summer school, do we have any kind of a wait list for students who want to be accepted, but the spots are filled? Are there wait lists?
Not at this point, because we haven't told anybody they couldn't come yet. Really what we're trying to do is invite everybody. So once we identify if there is a gap and how large it may be in terms of staffing, what the projections are in terms of filling those slots, or where, to Mr. Wilbanks' point, is where we could shuffle staff or students to fill in all the space that we have, then we'll be able to answer that question. But frankly, our goal is to say yes to everybody. Sure. The only reason I'm even a little bit hesitant is because I really want to see what the gap is, and I really don't know what it is yet. Yeah.
And what about, do we have like requirements? Let's say a student signs up for summer school and comes a couple of days and then disappears for a while. What do we do about that?
So as part of the process, we do have parents make commitments around it because we want them to come to school. We also are trying to create a scenario where they go to the environment that they're actually in. There isn't going to be going back and forth. And the reason that is because teachers will not be teaching simultaneously in
Good.
both environments. So if the parent signs up for their child to be in person, their attendance will need to be in person or or online if that's their choice. But yeah, that we actually included that as part of our process.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And then skipping over to the social emotional, can a child or can a student sign up and talk with someone? Do their parents have to be notified since they're a minor?
They can always go to their school counselor and talk to their teacher or school counselor. School counselors can interact with students like they do in the regular school day without notifying a parent because it's not a therapeutic service. Where parents have to get involved is when it becomes more therapeutic in nature because there are other laws attached to that. And the licensure that's required by the person providing the service is different than a school counselor. A school counselor can't do that. So during the school day or at the summer programming, if there is a school counselor available and a student wants to see them, that's totally normal and allowed. But if they do need something beyond that, that's more medical in nature or therapeutic in nature, then a parent will have to get involved.
Okay. And is there any chance that we could have these specialized clinics on campuses rather than just at the PDC?
No, that's a good idea, and I will share that with the team. The reason why it's at the PDC right now, and we have to think about where it is because the hours in which it's being provided, it's in a centralized location, so people can go to it. It's not necessarily happening in the middle of the day in the morning, and you might place it accidentally in a part of town where the majority of the referrals at that particular time aren't happening and people are having to drive way across town. PDC is kind of in a centralized location. That's the reason why it's there. But as Dr. Brown mentioned, it can happen virtually or in person. But I can share that with the team. You know, we can always look and see where the referrals are coming from and which parts of town it's heavier or not. And if we can have remote sites, there's nothing to keep us from doing that. The staff is going to be able to provide the service anywhere as long as the environment is private and secure and confidential because it is a therapeutic service. But yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And could we entertain maybe the idea of maybe using some UTA interns that are in the social work or psychology department? I mean, would that help us if we had interns?
So when it comes to therapeutic services, usually people who are in the environment are allowed, who are earning hours towards a state licensure, usually have completed their coursework and are in a place in their programming where they are supervised by a licensed practitioner. All of ours have the licensure. If we were trying to extend that, we would have to seek special permission that allowed them to be supervise and earn hours under someone who is allowed to supervise someone who doesn't have the licensure. I can share that with my team and we can investigate that just to expand services. I don't know the answer to that question yet, but that's kind of what our boundaries are a little bit, but I'll share that.
That might alleviate, I know we have the 41 and we're grateful for those, but that may help to have just those extra backups that may be able to see even more students, because I feel like when we get back in the fall, we're going to see a lot of referrals and a lot of self-referrals.
Right, and if there's an opportunity to have a partnership where it's a win-win, they earn their hours and it's possible, I don't think we're opposed to exploring that in any way.
I just don't want anyone turned away.
No, I
or we
understand.
can't see you today, but we can see you Thursday of next week.
Yeah, I understand.
I want to try to avoid that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Fowler. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Mays. I apologize. I forgot one of the questions that I didn't write down. The high school numbers for summer school, you said are essentially the same, and that really is strange to me. Why do you think it is like that? I would expect it to be much higher.
Yeah, I asked that question, and they're still evaluating the numbers. That's why I didn't bring them to you tonight, because I didn't have them on my desk before I came into the meeting. But they said the team that manages summer school indicated to me that the numbers are pretty consistent with previous years for high school. So I don't know the answer to the question you're asking, but I think it's a good one that I am still looking into. I think the difference between elementary and junior high versus high school is it's credit based. It's not necessarily skill based. We do have a bridge program that we will be initiating in the summer around Algebra 1 to allow kids to really prep themselves for that course to help do exactly what you were describing earlier. But in terms of general summer school, it's acceleration or credit recovery. And so depending upon how students have been navigating through the credit recovery process during the school year and our grade recovery, which is new for many students, where they can continue to work with a teacher where they failed a 6 weeks and they can recover that grade without going through a credit recovery process, that number may be mitigating some of it. So I'll know more definitively what you're asking because I have asked that question already. I only don't have the detail because it wasn't on my desk right before I walked in, but I did ask this evening.
Okay.
So I had the same thought that you were, but I really think it has to do with the nature of the programming being not skill-based, which really exacerbates the number of kids we want to come versus high school. If you earn credit, you move on to the next course, and then we have to do the process that I described in the last meeting, which is accelerate to close gaps as they're moving into their next course, even though they've earned the credit.
Well, I appreciate it, and sorry, Ms. Fowler, that's one more as as secretary. I'm making her write so many things tonight.
I like homework. I'm getting lots of it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. I see no more questions. Dr. Wertz, Dr. Brown, thank you very much for your presentation. Dr. Cavazos, our next item is consider any motions. Do we have any motions?
Thank you, President Mason. We do not have any motions to consider tonight under this item.
Okay, thank you very much. So next on our agenda are items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn? Okay, seeing none. Next, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mason. So as customary, we'll have a statement about our consent items. So Ms. Moss.
Thank you, President Mays, trustees, Dr. Cavazos. We bring for your consideration tonight several consent items, including 2 bids, 13 purchases greater than $50,000 that are exempt from bid, and item F, a resolution of the board regarding ESSER 3 and policy CB local, state and federal revenue sources. With this resolution, the board adopts text as recommended by TASB for inclusion at CB local, state, and federal revenue sources. Administration recommends approval of the consent items.
Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? Okay, got a motion by Mrs. Fowler, second by Mr. Wilbanks. Any discussion? Yes, Dr. Reich?
Just to clarify, we typically would do a resolution as a separate standalone item. We don't have to, we're not required to read the resolution or anything like that. It's okay the way it is, embedded in consent. Okay, I've got our district attorney a thumbs up. I got our board attorney here saying yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Okay, so we've got our motion, we've got our second. Please vote. All present vote in the affirmative, and the motion passes. Thank you very much, Mrs. Moss. Okay, next on our agenda are discussion items. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mason. This evening, we bring a legislative update for the board's information, and we have David Anderson, our legislative consultant, ready to go, I believe. David, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, so I'll turn it over to David Anderson.
Good evening. It's been fascinating to listen to everything tonight, and congratulations on hanging in there on everything. So we have a PowerPoint that will keep me on track tonight, and certainly be ready to answer any of your questions. But I think someone is going to drive that for us there. Let me see if I can get rid of that light a little bit there. So if we could go on to the next slide. There we go. So I really wanted to start with a couple of things for you. When we last talked about the legislature, we mentioned several things that characterized this session, and certainly those circumstances haven't changed a bit. One of the things that has been in the news a little bit this week is redistricting, and that, of course, is something that is characteristic of every session that in a year that ends in one. This time, redistricting is not being addressed because of the delays with the census data. And so I did want to tell you that the latest we have from the offices of the two chairs of this is that the census data will be to the states by September 30th. There will be a special session almost immediately after that. The governor spoke to that special session again today when he talked about some federal funds, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But the critical issue here, of course, is what happens with the districts, the House districts and the Senate districts. And I would expect as we look at some of the boundaries and where the growth has been, when all is said and done, Arlington ISD may have a little different look, maybe a significantly different look in terms of how the legislative districts that serve you, your delegation, and where they are. And certainly we'll be monitoring and staying very involved with that when we're back here in October. The other wrinkle on this is that depending on how quickly they're able to do the redistricting in October, we may see some delays in when the spring primaries and the runoffs occur. If the committees are efficient over the summer and in the interim, we're back in for a few days to get everything finalized, a week, 2 weeks even. We'll be on the same schedule we anticipate right now for spring primaries and runoffs. If it takes longer, those will bump a little bit later in the spring accordingly. And if they don't get this done until December or January, it really does affects the primaries in a pretty significant way. That's the one big issue that has not been addressed that we anticipated this session. So if we may, Frank, let's move on to the next slide. Redistricting hasn't been done. What is almost done is appropriations. The two bills that are worth noting are Senate Bill 1, which is the General Appropriations Act. The conference committee report is finalized but not finished. And today that caused a stir in the Capitol because several important amendments to that bill that were offered in the House were removed in conference. And for the most part, those amendments have to do with what is done with the second and third round of federal funds. And the governor, in response to some of the concerns, announced that with regard to the overall circumstances of federal, not just education, that he is absolutely committed to having the legislature have some level of engagement with this. And if necessary, that would be addressed in the special session in October when redistricting is done. And that action alone certainly will help reassure a number of people. Whether it's enough to reassure all of the decision makers remains to be seen. On appropriations specific to Senate Bill 1, trustees, the funding is there for the Foundation School Program. The funding is there for all of the changes in education that were incorporated into the Huberty-Taylor Act, House Bill 3 in 2019. All of the funding is built in for enrollment growth, or money is built in to reflect enrollment growth. So when we get to our scorecard at the end, you're going to see that from my perspective right now, I think the financial situation with the state budget looks very, very good. And of course, this doesn't really take into account the third round of the federal funds that are coming from Washington to help education. The second bill, the supplemental appropriations bill, is the bill that really does get us through the rest of this biennium. And that also is very promising. Economic circumstances in Texas, as all of you are very well aware, are much better now than they were in January. January was better than what they appeared to be in November. The announcement by the controller a week and a half ago about the revised revenue estimate and adding some additional funds certainly helped wrap up the budget in a pretty clean way. But supplemental appropriations bill is in Senate Finance. That has a hearing tomorrow. And so by the end of the day tomorrow, I think we'll have a much better sense of where that supplemental appropriations bill is. So Frank, if you would, let's go on to slide number 3, public education selected issues. And based on some conversations that trustees that you have had with me in some of our prior meetings leading into the session, and since the session began, conversations with Dr. Cavazos and his staff, identified several things for us to talk about very quickly. One is House Bill 1525, which is the cleanup bill for the Huberty-Taylor Act, House Bill 3 from last session. This bill right now is in the Senate. To say that this has become a beach ball being knocked around on the beach would be an understatement. The bill really has had a number of different iterations. Most of what is in the bill is more significant for smaller and mid-sized districts and for fast growth districts, but there are some things in there that are very positive for the overall circumstances of school districts in Texas. That bill has been linked pretty significantly to another bill that we'll talk about in a minute, in terms of without one, we likely will not get the other. And with House Bill 1525, I'll say that Chairman Huberty, not chairing public ed this session, but chair when the bill was passed in 19, has done a pretty amazing job in pulling together all the disparate concerns that have come up over the implementation of House Bill 3, and has done a good job of addressing that. The bill really has been a roller coaster, but if we can get this passed without a lot of amendments in the Senate, I think that it will be a positive bill to help with some of our school finance and program issues. When we were together last time, we talked about one of the other big issues of the session, and that's broadband, House Bill 5. And that bill is in conference right now. The two people who have steered that through the session, Representative Ashby in the House, Representative Ashby from Lufkin, Senator Nichols from Jacksonville, have done, again, a very impressive job of bringing together all of the disparate pieces related to getting the state of Texas into the 21st century with our statewide broadband. One of the issues that remains is where the administration of this initiative will take place over the next few years. But I think that will be resolved, and when we see the final bill, which I expect to see early next week, I think we'll be very pleased with what Senator Nichols, Representative Ashby, and their committee has done with this. Another issue that we have talked about, and I know this is very significant based on conversations that your constituents had earlier during public testimony, virtual education. And we have talked about this before. House Bill 1486 is the Keith Bell bill. This is the bill that I think the great majority of school leaders feel is the most appropriate bill moving forward, because it addresses the concerns that school districts have about control over their virtual program within the district to deal with students who are living within the district boundaries, and to be able to have that level of program control so that, and without the financial penalties that would currently exist. And it would, in essence, empower school districts to make decisions about what do we want to do with virtual ed? Do we want this to be an important part of our program for some students? Do we want this to be an option for some students? How do we want to deal with it? The critical point here is that Bell's 1486 makes this very much a program that would be directed by independent school districts. The Senate counterpart to that bill that Senator Taylor had, Senate Bill 27, is dead. So the real opportunity for virtual education is going to be 1486, and that's going to be heard tomorrow morning in Senate Education. The other bill that we keep an eye on is Ken King's House Bill 3643, which would create a virtual education commission. That is on the Senate intent calendar. It was on today. It did not get a vote. will roll over to Senate intent tomorrow. The commission that bill creates is structured very similarly to the School Finance Commission in 2017 that worked and their work led up, that commission's work led up to House Bill 3. So I think this is an important bill. The idea that 1486 and 3643 are mutually exclusive is absolutely incorrect. You can have one without the other, but in many ways, I think they complement one another. 1486 would mean that we get something immediately with regard to virtual. Well, 3643 gives us an opportunity to work with the legislature and take a longer, more thoughtful look at the research about virtual education and how we best utilize that. So Frank, if you would take us forward one more slide. I did pick a few bills that are important bills dealing with significant topics that we have right now and we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I want to give you a quick update on those bills as we go forward. I mentioned earlier 1525. Well, Senator Betancourt's 1365, which is about governance, accountability, speaks very directly to the due process that districts may have in a campus or district takeover. That bill is like 1525 in that it has gone back and forth and back and forth. Friday, a group of House members worked very diligently with a group of representatives from the public ed leadership community, and I think we've reached a point with that bill that we're pleased with it. Texas School Alliance, of which Arlington is a member, TASA, Texas Association of School Boards, have all signed a joint letter with several other of the superintendent-led organizations supporting that bill. And that's in the House right now. The other bill I wanted to mention is Senate Bill 2094, which is a Taylor Betancourt bill that's also in the House Public Education Committee pending. That is a governance-related bill. Representative Dutton's House Bill 4465 is a bill that started out as a troublesome bill for us, but has improved as it went through the process. And currently, that bill, which speaks to grants to help with disaster relief in times of disasters, is much better because the funding for that is not coming out of money that would have gone to schools otherwise. Instead, those grants will be funded out of the commissioner's share of the federal funds. You recognize that the commissioner has 10% of the funds that are coming to the state to use for his statewide initiatives. That's where the funding would be in the current iteration of that. The other bill that I wanted to touch on is House Bill 3970, Steve Toth's bill. It's the companion bill to Senate Bill 2202, and I've got a typo there, please excuse that, Brandon Creighton's bill. This is the social studies bill that was heavily debated and amended on the House side a week ago. It went to the Senate. The Senate restored the original language, and they're sending it back to the House. One of the critical points there, from my perspective, is the provision in the bill that would say that a teacher may opt out of teaching a controversial topic or controversial current event. And certainly there are other points there to be concerned about, and I look forward to working with Dr. Wirtz and Dr. Cavazos if this bill does pass in terms of how we work with the administrative code language as that's implemented with the state board. But the concern about a teacher opting out is one that really is a fundamental governance issue in public schools, trustees. It undermines that hierarchical structure that's so important with a campus, with departments, department chairs that report to the principal reports to the central office, and the central office that reports to the trustees for policies. So that is a bill that I think almost every school leader has concerns about. And that bill is likely to pass based on how it's gone back and forth. House Bill 547 is James Frank's bill that would allow homeschool age children to participate in UIL activities in the district in which they are eligible to enroll. That bill has failed for 4 straight sessions. It was stuck in the Education Committee until Representative Frank opted to make it permissive to the school district. And the way the bill is written right now, and the way I think the bill will pass, if it passes, that permissive nature will stay with the bill. So at some point, if it passes over the next 4 to 5 months, you'll have to begin to develop policies and procedures for how you determine if you want homeschool students, homeschool age children to participate in UIL academic and athletic activities in Arlington ISD. And if you do, what are the procedures you'll follow for those students to apply and to play? That bill is in the Senate. It's on the Senate intent calendar for tomorrow. It requires a 9/16 vote to bring it to the floor. And then, of course, it needs just 16 votes to pass in the Senate. And then the last bill I want to mention in the specific list is Senate Bill 2015, which is Paul Bettencourt's bill that would have established an Office of Inspector General at TEA with subpoena power. And that bill failed to get a favorable recommendation from House Public Ed today. I think we can say that that bill is dead for this session as a standalone bill. So Frank, if you'll take me one slide forward. In summary of the notes I prepared for this, trustees, I want to go back to your legislative priorities as we did the last time we were together. And of those 7 large priorities, appropriate funding, I think not only do you get a check, does legislature get a check on this, I think they really get a check plus because of what they've done to financially support the Foundation School Program and the programs that were created or extended in House Bill 3 2 years ago and fund enrollment growth. And again, that doesn't take into account the federal dollars. House Bill 3 support, continued tax relief, yes. In many ways, they go hand in hand. I do think that there are a couple provisions as we begin to dig into the appropriations bill in which you may see some additional tax relief. Not a whole lot, but I think that you may see some additional tax relief in the second year of the biennium, tax compression, because of what's happening with property values and with enrollment. And again, that's projected right now. We'll know a whole lot more about that when the budget passes. Implementation of House Bill 3, again, a check. And those first 3 items, as we said, very much linked. Now, with regard to TRS and increasing access to affordable health care, the verdict is still out on that. We have Senate Bill 1444 that is still alive that would provide some flexibility for you. There's some other things in there that I think raise a little concern to some of the school districts around the state. The provision in that bill would eliminate the districts of innovation opt-out provision. Some people call it a loophole, but it has certainly been used very advantageously for some districts around the state. So the verdict is out, the jury is out on that one. The accountability recalibration and STAR reliance reduction, I think when all is said and done, we're going to see some marginal improvements in accountability. There are a couple opportunities, particularly with the military readiness, that could pass that make a lot of sense, including credit for military readiness if a student completes 2 years of junior ROTC in a school district. But the STAR reliance reduction, not so much. The House has been very committed to that. Your representative, Matt Krause, has a bill that could help there. The problem with this has really been in the Senate, where the Senate has been extremely reluctant to do anything to reduce the reliance on the STAR exam. We've had a lot of help from Senator Powell, but the numbers in the Senate that continue to support the use of STAR are just, they're just too high right now. And then the improved funding for mental health needs, we'll be able to answer that in a more in-depth and thoughtful manner for you after the session when we get to dig into the budget. We do know that there's some legislation that would help with a commission to look at this going forward, but the actual budget numbers, we're just not able to tell yet until we dig into Senate Bill 1, once we have final copies of all of that. And then the last item, governance, I think that's going to end up as almost a stalemate this session. My concern reflects the concerns that you have expressed about more authority being given to the state education agency at the expense of local school districts. I'm not sure we have really seen a lot of pushback on that, but I think we've been able to hold the line in some places on this to maintain that balance between what the state education agency does and what the role of an independent school district is. And again, I've got to give that an incomplete. We'll give you a much better picture within the next 3 weeks when we get all of the bills together and can look at that as a matrix and determine exactly what the effects of this session have been. So Frank, if you would go on, I'll tell you, here's our final slide. We have 129 days behind us. We have 11 days ahead. They are going to be long days. The House adjourned today in a surprise move, and they have adjourned until Sunday at 1 o'clock. They're going to take off tomorrow and Saturday. The Senate is working today and may have a calendar on Saturday and then off Sunday. But next week is a critically important week, as it is at the end of every session, because we have calendar deadlines each and every day. And those calendar deadlines will determine whether contents of a bill or an entire bill move toward the finish line or fall to the wayside as we get close to sine die on Monday, May 31st. So there is a rapid fire look at some of the issues that I think are important to you. Let me be quiet now and see if there are any questions or comments that you may have about this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Wilbanks.
Thank you, President Mays, and thank you again, Mr. Anderson. Wow, 11 days. Hopefully, you've got a great vacation planned the day after sine die, because it's been a crazy session, or a session like no other, I should say.
I agree with you.
But, you know, as far as public ed goes, I don't think we can complain too much if you look to our left and to our right to other big areas of the budget, health and human services and transportation and other areas, higher ed. We've pretty much came out unscathed up to now versus some of those other areas. So we should count our blessings. I mean, a huge win is the maintenance of HB3, the ESSER funds, and I guess I didn't realize that ESSER 2, there's talk about releasing those funds now, so there'll be even more money for us to help remediate the COVID loss. So all good things. Favorable trends, they're not dead, as you're well experienced with the Texas legislature. You can't count anything out. There's been a number of zombie bills that keep resurrecting themselves, but for the most part, vouchers, extension, uncontrolled expansion of charter schools. I'm not opposed to charter schools, but I don't think, uncontrolled expansion has not been a good thing for public ed. Loss of local control, we fought the good fight there. And speaking of that, in Bell's bill, was that HB 1525?
1526, I believe.
In
the virtual education bill.
Oh wait, I know I'm getting that confused. Hold on, I got my cheat sheet here.
Okay. 1486 is the virtual bill that Keith Bell has.
Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not. SB 1365. You say right now that SB 1365, that we were opposed to it. That was the one that would give the commissioner final say in taking over of boards to kind of counter what's going on in Houston right now.
Yes.
My question to that, so the way I read it, there were still problems with it, but evidently those have been cleared up to the point that we've signed up. What exactly has changed that kind of moved our position and moved us from opposition to support?
Mr. Wilbanks, let me tell you, I agree with you on not many complaints. The money that is so important is very positive. And I also agree with you on the zombie bills. Never have I seen language from a bill get voted down 2 or 3 times and have it appear again in another bill. That has been one of the hallmarks of this session, not necessarily a good one. 1365, the Chairman Huberty and 3 House members, Keith Bell from Forney, Gary Van Dever from New Boston, and Brad Buckley from Killeen, pulled together a group of school leaders last Friday, representatives of a number of the management groups, and said, we want to figure out what we can do with this. And so the 2 areas that were the greatest concern to us, looking out for the Arlington ISD interest, Texas School Alliance, TASB, TASA, they were all in these conversations. But the 2 areas were accountability, particularly the way D's and F's are calculated. And then the second area was due process, because the bill is originally drafted and the bill is revised. It absolutely knocked the props out from under the notion of due process for school districts that are engaged with TEA over low-performing campuses over a period of time. So on Friday, those members asked the collective school group to work on those 2 issues. And so I think a lot of you know Dee Carney, who works with me here at Hillco Partners. I think the top accountability person in the state, someone that the Arlington folks are very familiar with. Dee came back and relied on the accountability experts who are in the Texas School Alliance districts, including Arlington, to help go through this and prepare the draft language for the members. At the same time, David Thompson with Thompson Horton was asked to look at the due process, and he consulted with several other people who are familiar with this, and those recommendations were taken back. Now, not everything that we took back has gone into the bill that we'll see on the floor Sunday, most likely. But we were certainly pleased with it enough that we could say, this is a better bill than status quo. And so that's where this is. Yesterday, the bill was due to be heard and acted upon on the House floor, or today rather, excuse me. Today's Thursday. You have to bear with me. The week has gotten long. It was supposed to be on the floor today. Chairman Huberty postponed it until tomorrow and explained there was a Ledge Council drafting error in the bill, and he was getting that fixed. And he was very clear. He called me this morning. I helped communicate that to a number of the organizations, and there's no doubt he is acting in good faith on this. We would have had it on the floor tomorrow, but now with House adjourned, that calendar pushes till Sunday. So we'll see it on Sunday. Long answer to your question, short answer, improvements with accountability, particularly the DF sequence, and improvements with due process to protect the governance interests and the appeals process for school districts that might be going through that.
Okay. No, thanks. That was very helpful in clearing it up. I'm glad we keep moving the needle. Even if some of these bills pass, we keep making them better or less. I think everyone's been working overtime to really come to compromise, and especially the House, it seems like has been very active in protecting our interests, not so much the Senate. I think this is a case in point right here. Let's move on to House Bill 4545 and SB 2094. I know this isn't one of our legislative agendas, but I personally have an issue with school-based school funding based on STAR, and That one, it keeps getting one of those that keeps ping-ponging back and forth. We keep striking it, I think, right in the House, and the Senate keeps trying to add it back in. Where does it
That's
stand
correct.
right now?
Yep. So that's a bill that we will be spending some time with over the weekend. 4545, the provisions of that bill, the last draft that we saw on that are very similar to what we just discussed. Improvement, not necessarily to a point where we say this is good, we can live with it. But Mr. Wilbanks, I think what we've got here is an issue in which we've got to look at what does the bill do to change the situation relative to the status quo. If nothing happens, are we fine with the status quo? And so to use the virtual as an example, the answer is if nothing happens with virtual and we get the status quo, then really the interests of Arlington ISD and every other school district that is not in the virtual school network is contingent upon decisions made by the commissioner with regard to waivers. And so in many ways, we have some issues right here with this, with the grant program and accelerated instruction. This makes some modifications. Are some things better than status quo? Yes. Are there concerns in the bill? Yes.
Okay. And then,
Like so many things, a mixed bag in 4545. The bill compared to where it was when the session began and it was filed, it's improved tremendously. But it was pretty bad when it was filed.
yes.
In my opinion.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad bill. On HB 1525, which had a provision in section 25, I believe, for requiring us to hold back ESSER funds over 5 years, up to 40%, I believe. That's been placed on the intent calendar in
the Senate.
In the Senate. What's the chances of that? I mean, is it pretty much dead, or could that still crop up? And
So that section in the bill is a non-starter for the House members. And so if that bill stays in there when it comes back, it clearly will go to conference because that's unacceptable to the House side. And that's the issue. That whole notion of the direction about the funds is what created the conflict today with Senate Bill 1. That the provisions that the House wanted in are not in there right now. I think the governor's trying to reassure. The House is very committed to this money, the federal funds going to the schools having the authority to spend those within the guardrails that were created at the federal level when the funds were appropriated. We know they're going to be distributed via Title I formulas. And so Dr. Cavazos and his team, Ms. Moss and others have a real good idea of what the amount of money that we're looking at. And based on the federal information, we should have a real good idea of how we can spend those funds. And the Senate, I have no doubt that someone was well-intentioned when they said this. They're trying to figure out a way to give you more time with those funds, basically take 3 years, the 3 years you have and spread it over 5. But you get into a governance question there. And as your advisor on governance, my advice would be, it's not a good trade. That the control of these funds and how you're going to utilize them to address learning loss and the other issues that they're intended to do should be made with the administration and the trustees. The Fed's intended you to have 3 years. There are ways that you may be able to get a bit more out of that. But I'm not sure that the state recommendation of, well, we're gonna force this into a circumstance in which every district has to do this over 5 years. Again, that flies in the face of governance of school districts. So my recommendation to you is that we hang on and that we continue to talk to your delegation about keep that out. And your House delegation is very strong on that. They do not want that. And the education leadership in the House does not want that.
well, I mean, we've already had discussions on how we're going to stretch that out and what best meets our needs in terms of that. And a one-size-fits-all for the state is just ridiculous and gets into that local control issue, which don't get me started on again.
We'll save that for a conversation in Arlington sometime after the session.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to go fast so my other colleagues can go, but I've got a few more here. Real quick, SB 1716, which is the special ed grant, that is one of which now allows the district's ARD committees to direct how that grant, which used to be called a credit, or
Yes.
some would call a voucher, is used. Is that another one in that bucket of it was really bad and onerous, and now it's acceptable? I think it's gone to a neutral position with most.
I think so. And specifically, the notion that the Regional Education Service Centers become the conduit adds a level of accountability for those funds that wasn't there originally. And it's a little different role for the regional service centers, but one that clearly they have the expertise to deal with. So the dollars are not going directly to families, but the families have some say about what sort of services. And to some extent, I think in most cases, there will be consultation with school districts. But again, it's better. I don't see that as a voucher bill at all based on the changes that have been made so far. Pardon me.
Well, yeah, and the only other bill that I had to talk about was to make a comment on the UIL bill, the Tim Tebow bill.
Yes.
Is it true that one of the last minute amendments was not only to allow homeschool students, which I'm not opposed to, as long as it's controlled in a way that we can control and not game the system, but one of the amendments also included students from instructional correctional institutions to be able to play on sports teams within our district. And I think it was already problematic in that we have UIL rules for eligibility, that if a kid makes a 69 in one class, they're ineligible to play on the football team. How are we going to police that eligibility for students coming from correctional institutions and homeschool? And I'm not saying our coaches would do this, but it seems ripe across the street for other coaches to game the system. So it just seems problematic in a number of areas, but specifically the eligibility issue.
Well, I could certainly go on for quite a while about what is wrong with that bill. The fundamental concept behind it is wrong, in my opinion. I would never begrudge any parent's right to educate their own children. If that's what a parent wants to do, in Texas, they have that flexibility, and they have that with very few, really no strings, no oversight from the state. But when a parent opts to waive their right to a public education, they're waiving the privilege that goes with that public education also. And that's UIL, among other things. There was an amendment on the House floor that added a requirement for the UIL to include Texas Youth Commission facilities, TYC facilities. And it was, if you remember the movie The Longest Yard, both iterations of it, basically this was the longest yard goes to high school. Those facilities, those 5 facilities would be able to field their own teams and would be forced. Well, I say forced. UIL would, if UIL recognized them, then districts would, if they placed them in a district, then all the schools in that district would have to play them. And that's the issue there. On the Senate side, Angela Paxton from Plano is the Senate sponsor of the bill. And she's been quite clear that she has no interest in keeping that in the bill. And the Senate version that is on the intent right now does not have that provision. Now, we understand that Representative Frank is concerned about losing that and may take the bill to conference. He may have an amendment that he wants Senator Paxton to offer, but I don't believe Senator Paxton has any interest in including TYC in this. And it's so ironic that the day that we're talking about this in the Senate, they passed Eddie Lucio III's bill, which has already been passed by the House, that prescribes how a student who assaults a referee will not be able to participate. And it's one of those things that if an Arlington ISD student, I know they never would, but if they did, if they're moved to a DAEP because of a disciplinary issue, they're not able to participate in UIL activities while they're there because of this. But a student in a youth commission could have assaulted someone with a knife or a gun, and that provision would allow them to participate in UIL academic and athletic activities. And so I don't think that will be in there. Certainly, we're doing what we can to keep that bill from passing. There is a boundary requirement in there, Mr. Wilbanks, that says right now that says a student, a school-age child who's being homeschooled could participate in activities in the district in which the student is otherwise eligible to enroll. What's really not addressed very well, though, is the transfer provisions. And I think that what we would end up with is a circumstance in which whatever your transfer rules are for students right now from outside the district, you'd probably be looking at a parallel circumstance for students who are homeschooled.
Yeah.
But it's rife with problems of school shopping on the part of a family who is homeschooling and recruiting on the other side. And it is permissive. That was the only way the bill came out of House Public Ed. When Representative Frank made it permissive, the vote went from 5 in favor to 8 against to 7 in favor, 6 against. And there was a swing of 7 votes on the House floor. So this is a bill that is hotly contested. And one of the 2 large homeschool coalitions, the Homeschool Freedom Network or the Homeschool Freedom Group, is opposed to the bill. They don't like it, and they've been very adamant in their opposition. So it is a controversial bill, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you. I've got one final comment, not a question to you, but I think a shout out needs to go out to our Representative Matt Krause for carrying HB 764. It's, I think, the furthest that a bill limiting the use of STAR has gone, but it's not gonna make the finish line, unfortunately. Again this year, but each session it seems like we get a little further and a little further and a little further. But again, I want to thank Representative Krause for fighting the good fight. And I would never correct you in public and say that you were talking about HB 1486 and that was really 1468. So I'll just leave it at that. I've hogged the mic enough. So let me turn it over to my other colleagues, including Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbanks. Mr. Chapa.
Thank you, President Mays. Mr. Anderson, we meet with you regularly in Governance Committee, and I know you've got a lot to do, and it's late, and I don't want to keep you. I know it's a lot of fascinating stuff going on in the legislature right now, but the thing that you said that intrigued me the most is, and I know you're a man of careful words, on Senator Betancourt's TEA Inspector General bill, you said that you think that the prospects of the bill passing as a standalone bill are pretty low. Does that mean that there's a possibility that this gets tacked on to something else?
It's a great question. The bill really died today. And I will tell you, I smiled when it came up in House Public Ed and they didn't vote on it because that in essence killed it for this session. I don't think that amendment to add or to create that Office of Inspector General, I think the possibility of it getting on a bill is very, very, very low. But believe me when I say that is something that is high on my watch list, and we're going to do everything we can to keep that from passing. I don't object to Inspector Generals by any means, and I don't think you do either, if it's done correctly. In this case, the bill contained none of the standards for Inspector General that are recognized at the national level, none of them. The Inspector General would have subpoena power, would be appointed by and report to the Commissioner of Education, and have the authority to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse in school districts, regional service centers, charter schools, and other local education agencies, but not the state education agency. The bill is tremendously flawed, and I was very pleased today when it did not come out of House Public Ed.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Anderson. That's the only question I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chapa. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Mays. Mr. Anderson, I only have about 10 more questions beyond what Mr. Wilbanks had for you. Just kidding. So I appreciate everything, and I know these 11 days are going to feel like 50. So thank you for what you do with us and for us and other districts as well. I just clarifying question or curiosity on the homeschool UIL issue, Frank's bill. Is there, as far as us being able to, if it goes somewhere, putting rules down, promulgating all that out, what does that look like as far as our autonomy in being able to do that versus TEA being able to step in, or even UIL having something to say that, no, you can't do that, you can do this? Is there anything like that that we have to be concerned about should this thing pass?
Dr. Reich, I think what we want to pay attention to is the University Interscholastic League. And
Right.
TEA really doesn't, TEA has indirect rulemaking with regard to some of the extracurricular, but the procedures for this would be with the University Interscholastic League. Jamie Harrison at the University Interscholastic League has been a resource witness on this and has, I know, met regularly with all of the interested parties. From my perspective, and I think this would, I can't put words in his mouth, but I think that he would certainly have a similar observation. The bill is effective, if it passes, the bill is effective September 1, 2021. And so I would be willing to bet right now that if the bill does pass, Dr. Cavazos' office will start to get calls from homeschoolers as early as June 1st about how Arlington is going to handle this. The UIL rulemaking process is a very thorough one. I think you're familiar with this with the governing board and the vote by the superintendents and all that they have to go through. A more appropriate way to deal with this would be to have a 1-year lag from the time the bill becomes effective September 1 to when the homeschool students would be able to engage. That would give the University Interscholastic League time to develop procedures. It would give trustees in school districts across the state time to develop their procedures as well. And my prediction on this is that if the bill passes and we don't have that time, it's really going to be a train wreck. And all of the concerns that we have about this will be magnified because we don't have the time to be thoughtful about it. And this is an issue that does require thoughtfulness because it's not just a matter of the student coming in and participating with debate or with the sports team. There's so many other questions about liability and about cost. The bill speaks to that in a fairly general way, but it does require, I believe, thought on the part of districts and the UIL. And I feel certain TASB will play an important role in this in providing some model guidance for this. I would hope they would. That's, they have the great expertise to help do that. So yes, you will have a lot to say about it. But to a great extent, we're going to need some guidance from the University Interscholastic League to make sure that what you do in Arlington is consistent with the UIL rules that would relate to this if the bill passes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. I don't see any other lights. Yes, I do. Mr. Hogg.
Thank you. And Mr. Anderson, thank you so much. And you touched on Senate Bill 1444 by Taylor about TRS. And
Yes.
y'all know up here, I'll talk about TRS all day and what poor insurance we have and what we need to do to really help. The other one that comes in is HB 1342 by Leach that's allowing districts to get the data in summary from that. And it's an intent calendar. Is there any
That's right.
traction on that? Is that going to process through? Because for districts to truly opt out, you have to have that data to be able to follow
Yes.
through.
So that's an interesting circumstance because this is a bill that it went to local calendar on the House side. It was passed there, strong vote for that. And it's been recommended for local and uncontested calendar in the Senate side, but it was placed on Senate intent, which is a little bit different. Senate intent gives people an opportunity to slow it down in an easier way, but also to amend it. But this is a bill that should pass, but it's also a bill that could get caught up in the tension between the two chambers. Because the tension right now between the House and the Senate, we know at this time in the session, the tension is always high. But there's a level to that tension that we don't see very often. There's a lot of hostage taking, one chamber to the other with bills that are on Senate intent one day and then they're not the next because of some issue that perhaps the bill author had with the Senate bill. So this is a bill that by all measures should pass. And because it's in the Senate, there's time for it to pass. We're not looking at deadlines on this until midweek next week. So Mr. Hogg, if I had to predict on this one, I would edge on the side of passing on this bill.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'd encourage our legislative committee and you, like anything we can watch and do on Senate Bill 1444, because while we're not considering that option right now, and our work from last session has been amazing with TRS Active Care, they've done a lot more, and I must thank Dr. Grassos and Mr. Kale over there for truly changing somewhat a system that manages 400,000 lives. It's still good to have options just in case. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
I will echo what you said. My hat is off to Scott Kale. He's accomplished some things with the TRS staff that 24 months ago, 26 months ago, I would have said is not going to happen. And just through his sheer perseverance and his great insight and skill there, you have made progress. And I think that the relationship is very positive, and there are a lot of school districts going to benefit from the work he's done there.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. I'm just a bill. That will never go from my head as a child, learning that from PBS.
And it shouldn't.
Mr. Anderson, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you again for helping to summarize, helping us to understand the movement of so many of these bills that impact public education. We really appreciate your time and effort, and just stay awake for 11 more days.
Yes, thank you. And I look forward to our post-session debriefing at some point, first with staff and then, of course, with you, trustees. Thank you for all you do. We certainly saw great evidence of that tonight in the meeting. Thank you. We're honored to be your voice here in Austin at the state capitol. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so now we move to our open forum for non-agenda items. As shared before, all persons in attendance are required to wear a mask. Speakers who are addressing the board in person, yes. Oh. Go ahead.
Yeah, budget.
Okay. Are we prepared? Mm-hmm. Okay. So prior to that being next on our agenda is we have our very important 2021-2022 preliminary budget update.
Thank you, President Mason. At this time, we will provide a brief presentation related to our budget planning because this is really a continuation of what we have already presented, and then a preparation for what is coming in June the 10th, as early as that, as we move towards recommending a budget and adopting a budget at some point in June. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Moss.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. Vassos is right. This will be a brief update, basically on a couple of items that relate to our current year's budget. And then I'll follow up on some of the taxable values that we talked about last month and kind of show you what that will do as far as our tax rate. The first item, which is current year's budget, is our hold harmless. And I'll just go over this again for you. We've shared it with you before. But the first 2 6 weeks, we are automatically held harmless. The third 2 6 weeks, we were required to offer in-person learning, and we did that. We were also required to complete an attestation and submit that to TEA, and we completed that in January. The final semester requires at least 80% of our students attend in person, or that the percent of in-person attendance is greater than the 38.1% that we turned in the fall, submitted in the fall. As of today, we are at 55%, so we have reason to believe that TEA will approve us and hold us harmless. So in doing that, we've calculated that information based on that. You may recall that back in January, I shared an update with you and I showed you this slide where we were looking at some projections based on VATRE passing, whether or not we were held harmless, and I shared with you those totals. Those items highlighted in the yellow or the orange there were items that were not adjusted at the time that we shared that out in January. So this is a look at those items that are actually adjusted. The middle column comes directly from that previous slide in January, where we were looking at if we were held harmless for the full year, we would our bottom line would be about $10.9 million. If you look at the right-hand column, that's where we have forecasted it out as of March of this year. And the bottom line shows that we have a surplus of $32.5 million. And again, that is as of March. So we will see some other adjustments as well there. If you look at the variances, part of them are a result of the VATRE that passed. The whole harmless calculation is added and included in that as well. And then our annual payroll savings that we see as a result every year for positions that are not filled, that are vacant for the year, that's part of it as well. And that $32.5 million, I will say, it seems like a pretty large amount, but it's really not if you take into consideration that if we did a general pay increase of 1%, that would cost us about $4.5 million, right around. So if you do the math there, that kind of makes that not as significant as it really looks at $32.5 million. It is a swing going from $31.5 million deficit to a $32 million surplus, though. The next slide, federal assistance, we've talked about that a little bit tonight. I just wanted to share out with you again that ESSER 1, $15 million is what we've received. ESSER 2, we're estimating that to be $64 million, and then ESSER 3, $134 million. Of course, they've already allocated 2/3 of that, which is that $89.7 million that you see. Here's a look at the budget timeline. I share that with you each time, and we are on May the 20th, just a really brief update tonight. And we'll share those numbers and how they affect the proposed tax rate next. So you also saw this slide the last time, and we talked about if those taxable values increase greater than the 2.5%, then we would be required to compress that tax rate. And so we received those values, and I'm going to share those out with you tonight. There's a lot of numbers on this page, but what I want to share with you is the amount that we received for our April estimate on the 30th. If you'll look in that last column, that for the April estimate for 21-22 is $36.5 billion. And if you look at the column right next to it, 2021, it was $34.9 billion. Our calculations are that we are going to look at a 5.96% increase. And we had to estimate that number. You'll see there in the yellow as well. And in most cases, I'm accustomed to that April estimate being very conservative. and then that amount decreasing by the time we get to July. Here in Arlington, you can see the pattern. It typically, that amount typically decreases here. So that's why we're looking to see where we might land at July certified. That $35.1 billion is what we're estimating based on the historical data that we're looking at here. And what TEA does is they take that July certified estimate, compare it with last year's July certified estimate to determine what our maximum compressed tax rate is going to be. And I'll share you what we're calculating that based on our projections here. So it shows you 1920 what our tax rate was when House Bill 3 first came out, and we were compressed to 97 cents. And then in 2021, the VATRE passed, and we were able to get those additional 13 pennies, and we were at 1.0864. Our current 21-22 estimate, and I say current because it still may change, we're looking at a compressed rate for Tier 1 of 0.8865. We still keep those golden pennies and copper pennies, so that would be 1.0565 for the new M&O tax rate for us this year, if all of those estimates and projections were to hold true. And then our budget priorities, I wanted to share those out again. Of course, our competitive compensation, our stipend review and adjustments. When you look at items C, D, and E, those are things that we're looking at considering using some of our ESSER dollars for as well. So we're looking at reducing the general operating budget and spending some of those ESSER dollars for these items. And our next steps, on June the 10th, we will be sharing some preliminary numbers with you on our general operating budget, our food and nutrition budget, construction fund budget, as well as our natural gas and debt services budget. That is our next step. We will have to actually propose a tax rate. I don't know, Dr. Cavazos, if you want to talk about what we're recommending yet, or just wait on that. Okay? So that's our timeline to adopt that tax rate. It's not adopted until August, but we do have to propose one at the June the 10th meeting. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Moss. Do we have any questions or comments from any trustees? Dr. Reich?
I just wanted to say thank you very much for putting this together. I know we will be in lots of communications between Finance Committee and you and your department. It is interesting that things look good, but they're not really necessarily good. It just depends on where things go. And regarding the tax rate compression, so we're looking at about 3 cents difference right now, and I know you don't have a formal recommendation on what to do with INS and M&O, but moving forward, if whatever happens this year, say it's at 5 or 6, whatever that is over that 2.5% trigger. So what happens the following year if, again, we're at that 2.5, over that 2.5, we keep compressing and compressing, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's something I just want everybody to be aware of. With us coming out of COVID, the projections are already greater than what they were thinking they would be. I think we're going to see even a larger rebound, and that's just something for us to be cognizant of as a board, that we're going to get squeezed, and that revenue is not going to be what we would hope that it would be from the increase of the property values. And I mean, that hasn't changed in this legislative session. And so that's when we're preparing this budget and when we're moving forward, we've got to keep that in the forefront of our minds, that for you, what you're looking at and forecasting, it's going to be shrinking.
And House Bill 3, of course, they're buying down that tax rate basically.
Right.
So where we see the decrease on the tax side, we should see an increase on the state revenue side.
Right, right. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Mr. Wilbanks.
Not a question, thank goodness, just a request. So one of my concerns is if, in the scenario that Dr. Reich mentioned, and I'm sure every school district is in this, that really effectively puts a cap on how much our budget can grow, and 90% of our budget is salaries. And I'd like to see some scenarios in the future, and kind of work offline, and I know you're busy, but how that would affect if we had a similar growth over the next 5 years, the tax rate and what would be available, all things equal, to provide a cost of living adjustment, because it seems like at some point we get capped at only increasing our budget 2.5%. Now, I know with our TRE, we've got some room with the additional copper pennies and the golden pennies, but I'd like to see those kind of scenarios play out in terms of what that really means to us going forward, in terms of if we're capped at 2.5% going out for the next 5 years, what that would really mean impact-wise into the budget, and how we could maintain our competitive pay going forward.
Yes, and Mr. Wilbanks, that's our plan, is to share some preliminary forecasts for the next 3 years. Hopefully, we have those numbers for you on June the 10th as well. And so when we do that, we'll do different scenarios, because we'll be estimating what we think student enrollment will be, where will our ADA be, so we can calculate that revenue. So we could do the same thing with the scenarios as far as the taxable value and the tax rate as well. So when we're calculating that revenue, we can say, well, if it's 2.5%, if it's 3%, if it's 15% growth that we're seeing, we can do different scenarios for it.
Yeah, and again, for that exercise, just to understand, is keep everything constant, but assume that our tax basis, our property tax revenue grows by about whatever it was this year projected into the next 5 years. And what would that mean, everything else being equal in terms of what's available?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you'll recall, last month when we talked, the TAD was saying we would be 0% or a negative. And so that's not what happened. Again,
Surprise, surprise.
And I will say also, this is an anomaly year. So
Yeah.
what we're seeing between April and July could change. This is just our estimate right now.
Yeah. So, no, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbanks. I don't see any other lights. Once again, thank you, Mrs. Moss. I tried to make it more brief, but it didn't work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now, next on our agenda is our open forum for non-agenda items. As shared before, all persons in attendance are required to wear a mask. Speakers who are addressing the board in person, please keep your mask on. Thank you. Mrs. Benjamin, do we have any requesters registered to address the board regarding non-agenda items?
President Mays, we had one registered requester for this portion of the meeting, Jesus Mendoza. He was on the Zoom line, but he is no longer. Our webmaster has informed me. He did send a handout, so since he was not able to stay on this late hour to speak to us via telephone, I will share these and we'll make a note of that in the minutes that we shared his handout, even though he couldn't speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Benjamin. Okay, next on our agenda is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays, and we've referenced it over and over tonight, but we are reaching the end of our school year, and so I thank our teachers again and our staff for the wonderful work they've done this year. Looking forward to graduation as well, and I want to especially thank our campus principals for their efforts in all of the end-of-year activities and all the implementation of that and making them special for our students, principals, and staff. So thank you to them, and that's my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cavazos. Do we have any trustees with reports? Mrs. Fowler?
Thank you, President Mays. I wanted to give a shout out to our very own Frank Sack, our webmaster. Frank was instrumental in helping with the Open Arms Clinic virtual gala this year. We weren't able to have one, in person, but Frank was able to set up a Zoom with, gosh, I don't know how many. We sold 200 boxes, so we set up a Zoom for all the people to participate, had us during the dining area, dining time. Then he even kept us when we were doing virtual scavenger hunts. And everyone at Open Arms Clinic was just so impressed with Frank and have said so many times that there is no way we could have pulled off a virtual gala had it not been for Frank Sack. So Frank, we appreciate you so much for volunteering your time. It was even on a Sunday. He gave up his day off to help us with the virtual event. So Open Arms and myself, we're very grateful for you, Frank. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fowler. Any other trustees with reports? Okay, I would like to just give a very quick report that this month of May is, and I want to say it correctly, is our Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Please go out, do some research, look at some of the art, look at some of the culture, look at some of the food, look at the mass area that covers this group of individuals. And what I looked at, what I thought was interesting is why did they choose the month of May to make this recognition? And what I learned was 2 reasons. One, on May the 7th of 1843, the first Japanese immigrant arrived in the United States. Then more than 2 decades later, on May 10th of 1869, the Golden Spike was driven into the first transcontinental railroad, which was completed mainly by using Chinese labor. So please go out, do some research. Once again, very thankful to be able to say we've got another opportunity to learn about our diversity, not only within our school district, but within our community. So take some time to learn some more. With that being said, Dr. Reich.
And thank you, President Mays. I just wanted to add on to that. As far as an opportunity, there's something called it's the first time, the inaugural event, the Nishan Fest, or Festival, that Asia Times Square, Matthew Lowe, is putting on. I'm a proud sponsor of that event. And that is occurring tomorrow and Saturday. So that's just one of those opportunities. I just want to put it out there for everybody to look that up and participate in that opportunity.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Fowler.
Is it time for my report?
Oh my goodness, she's so ready. Okay, we have no other board reports. So, Miss Secretary, do we have any items to consider this evening?
I do, President Mays. Thank you. All right, so let's see if I did this right. So David and Aaron would like to know the numbers for summer school and high school. The numbers of those that are graduating this year compared to previous years. Aaron would like to know the numbers that will be attending the social emotional clinics. The numbers, was that correct?
It's close. So it's not just the numbers, but also to look at stratifying what that looks like as far as the different populations and what they're, if there's trends in what they're looking at in their emotional and social needs and the counseling needs.
Okay.
So that we can look at that as a district. And just to clarify on the numbers for the high school, it wasn't what the numbers are, but why the numbers are what they are.
Why they are
essentially.
what they are.
You're doing great.
And last one, David, you may have to help me with this. You want to see the scenarios of, different scenarios of property tax increases over 5 years and how those impact the budget.
If we have this exact same growth in property values over the next 5 years, all things equal in the budget, how that affects our bottom line in terms of what's available for
the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be included as part of the forecast, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that concludes my report.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Secretary. It is now 11:19 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.